I'm calling the meeting of the Bloomington School Board to order on Monday, October 14th. And as our tradition, I would ask you to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All board members are present to begin the meeting. I'd now ask for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Mr. Chair?
Discussion? Mr. Bergstrom, Director Bergstrom, yes.
I'd like to make a motion to strike item number 4 from Part B agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to strike item 4 from the agenda. I find this somewhat ironic in light of recent communications, Director Bergstrom, that you don't want to see last-minute changes to agendas. So coming forward to this motion, I think just on the face of it, it's something that we should probably all oppose until we talk about the proprieties of changing agendas. But since you've made the motion, it's open for discussion.
Well-
Mr. Chair? Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, Director Bergstrom.
I think this is too little, too late. I think it's a lame attempt.
I'm sorry, you're speaking to the motion, and all we're speaking to is whether we're going to eliminate it, not a pro or con on it. So is there
All
any
right.
discussion as to whether we should keep it on the agenda or
The
not keep it on the
discussion is
agenda?
we'll keep it off
Director
the agenda.
Bartolotta?
Well, Mr. Chair, I feel that we should have the discussion first before we have the resolution brought to us. We know nothing about this company. We had a meeting set for 2 weeks ago, at which
Again,
time we could
you're
have...
arguing the motion rather
Right.
than whether it should be on the agenda at all. So again, I'm going to ask if anyone has something to say about whether we remove this from the agenda, rather than arguing about or speaking to the motion itself. Any further
I
comments?
say
or-
we remove it from the agenda.
Yes,
I
Director
would
Bush.
support it because I do think it needs more discussion and looking at by the board. And we're going to have a new, fairly new, who knows, board coming up in January. And it just seems too early to be making a major change just a few months before the new board will be starting. So I would support just delaying it, not that I'm against it, but I think to vote tonight is too soon.
As the maker of the motion, the best way to get background information is to have it be on the agenda so you can hear from the people involved. This is your opportunity to learn about it. You all received the proposal. So I think removing it from the agenda is contrary to your desire to have more information at this
I'm
time.
sorry to interrupt, but I thought you didn't get to debate this.
I'm saying why it should remain on the agenda, Director Bergstrom. I'm not debating the quality of the motion. I'm saying why it should remain on the
certainly sounds
agenda.
like you're sharing an opinion.
I sometimes do that, Director Bergstrom, but it's in order.
I tried to share an
Director
opinion, and I was
Gibb.
shouted down.
Mr. Chair, the only objection I'm hearing is that these 3 board members apparently haven't had time to read the proposal. I know that we're going to have the representative of the company come in and speak to us, so I think, as you note, if they don't like the proposal after they've heard the presentation, they can certainly vote against it, but I think we should move forward with it because it, you know, we've waited too long to try to move this process forward, and I think it's time to get it done.
Okay, Director Bartolotta?
Mr. Chair, we had a session planned 3 weeks ago with a whole other company. Now, it's my understanding, do we have a gentleman's agreement? Do we have a handshake? Did you have any kind of an agreement with Teamworks? The man was scheduled to come here on the 29th of September. Now, all of a sudden, did we tell them up and tell them we're not using you? Have we had any discussion with the other company? I mean, I think there's a lot to discuss before we even get to this point.
Okay, the motion is to remove item 4 from the agenda entirely. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No. Perhaps we need to have a roll call vote then, and we will do an alphabetical order then. Director Ablin?
No.
Director Bush?
Bartolotta would be
Excuse me, Bartolotta. Let me get out my alphabetical roster so I don't make that mistake. Director
Don't leave
Bartolotta?
one.
I would like it removed.
Voting aye.
Aye.
Okay. Director Bush?
Aye.
Director, I'm out of order still. Director Bergstrom,
Aye for removal.
for removal. Director Hibbs?
No.
Director Corman?
No.
And the chair votes no. So by 4 to 3, it'll remain on the agenda. Continuing with the approval of the agenda then, are there any further suggestions for change? Any motions? Then we'll move forward to approval. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. And we come to the section of our agenda then, which is for recognition of students, staff, and public. We have an agenda item here for recognition of Lights On After School and a proclamation. So would someone care to make that resolution?
Mr. Chair.
Motion, please. Yes, Director Hibbs.
Resolved, that the School Board of Independent School District 271 authorize the attached proclamation declaring the week of October 14th, 2013 as Lights On After School Week, the 14th annual national celebration of after-school programs.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded then for Lights On After School Week proclamation. Let me then read the proclamation that you're voting on. Whereas the Bloomington Board of Education stands firmly committed to quality out-of-school time programs and opportunities because they, bullet points, provide safe, challenging, engaging, and fun learning experiences to help children and youth develop social, emotional, physical, cultural, and academic skills. Second point, support working families by ensuring their children are safe and productive after the regular school day ends. Third point, build stronger communities by involving our students, parents, business leaders, and adult volunteers in the lives of our young people, thereby promoting positive relationships among children, youth, families, and adults. And point 4, engage families, schools, and diverse community partners in advancing the welfare of our children. Whereas the Youth and Family Department has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in education and well-being of our youth, grounded in the principle that quality out-of-school time programs are key to helping our children become successful adults. Whereas Lights On After School, a national celebration of out-of-school time programs held in October 2013, promotes the critical importance of quality before and after school programs in the lives of children, their families, and their communities. Therefore, be it resolved that the Bloomington Board of Education declares the week of October 14th, 2013, Lights On After School Week. And be it further resolved that the Bloomington Board of Education enthusiastically endorses Lights On After School and is committed to innovative out-of-school time programs and activities that ensure that the lights stay on and the doors stay open for all children before and after school. Signed, Tim Culver, Chair, Board of Education, and the date. Is there discussion or questions? Then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and it carries. And thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome Christy Christensen, Youth and Family Coordinator at Washburn Elementary School, to address us now.
Thank you. Hi, I want to thank members of the board and Superintendent Les Fujitaki for recognizing our event tomorrow evening, as well as recognizing the importance of before and after school programs. Currently, the Kids Safari program has 920 children enrolled within the 10 elementary school buildings, and we are in our 26th year. The Galaxy program is an option for families in middle school, and we are in all 3 of the middle schools. And through our enrichment program, multiple opportunities are also available throughout the 10 elementary schools throughout the school year. Tomorrow night, we celebrate these after-school opportunities for students at the Lights On event at Oak Grove Elementary from 6 to 7:30 with music, food, games for all families. The event is sponsored by the Bloomington Crime Prevention Association grant and other partnerships with local businesses. We extend an invitation to all of you to join us at our event tomorrow evening, and again, we thank you for the support and the recognition of before and after school programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. thank you for being here tonight, Ms. Christensen, to respond to that proclamation acceptance by the school board. We're pleased with the work you're doing and with all of the efforts to expand the school day with professional staff and volunteers. Thank you. I would like to ask if there are any high school students who are present here for class credit tonight. Anybody here from high school? Oh, okay. I'm glad I asked the question because there's some important information then I'm going to share with you. I get to say that it's a requirement here in Bloomington, and we're proud of it, that our 12th grade government classes observe a governmental meeting as part of their education. It can be of any sort, and that includes city council meetings, school board meetings, even courtroom proceedings. The social studies curriculum guide identifies essential standards, so this is an essential standard in Bloomington. Understand the role and influence of political processes and organizations by examining the role of interest groups, think tanks, the media, and public opinion on the political process and public policy formation. So the school board chair recognizes students in the audience, so thank you for being here. We're then invited to ask you to come forward, but I'm going to skip that part tonight. We have a crowded meeting agenda, and we have a lot of people waiting to speak their turn and observe this meeting. So what I'm going to instead do is pass on the word that at the end of at least 1 hour, or if you want to stay for the whole session, we've got some interesting stuff coming up, as you can tell. You may go to one of the cabinet members along this wall. Those are the people who are the administrators. Ask them to sign off on that form or your notebook, whatever it is you need in order to demonstrate that you were at the meeting tonight, October 14th. So that will be your next step. And again, you're invited to stay through more of the meeting than the first hour. Anything else I need to add there? All right, then let's move ahead. This is an opportunity now on our agenda that we have reached the end of the introductory portion before we move to Part A. Is there anyone who wishes to address the school board on an item that is not on the agenda?
Good evening, Chairman Culver, board members, Superintendent Fujitaki, cabinet members, and listening audience. My name is Laurel Kuplick, and I am a registered nurse. I have been working in the Bloomington schools as a nurse for nearly 20 years. I am currently in my 12th year at Kennedy High School. I'm here tonight to briefly give you insight to the duties and importance of a registered nurse in a high school. We see many students with chronic health concerns such as diabetes, asthma, allergies, and seizures, along with other life-threatening conditions. We are trained to assess, treat, and triage the needs of these students. Along with illnesses, there are injuries. Our students are very active in phys ed, dance, music. Students work with woods, metals, and power equipment in shop class, and they handle chemicals and heat sources in science labs, photo labs, and food labs, just to list a few activities. Along with these and other medical needs for our students, we have seen an increase with anxiety, depression, and other mental health concerns. We are often the first ones these students seek out for help. Dealing with these critical needs is no small task. For Bloomington to have successful schools, it needs a strong nursing staff. With that in mind, I find it shocking that the school board is not willing to pay its nurses a fair working salary. We have made significant contribution, and it is high time we are recognized for what we have done. To be able to attract and retain quality nurses, our compensation needs to be brought into alignment with the rest of the professional licensed staff. I'm going to read to you now other statements from my colleagues and BHA members. From Donna Johnson, Health Associate, Southwood Center, 10 years. Bloomington Schools Health Associate contribute to many ways to the safety of our students and their academic success. We are highly skilled, conscientious, compassionate professionals. Please recognize our contributions by negotiating a fair contract with us. Susie Duncan, RN Hillcrest for 6 years. I have worked hard in nursing school and studied for my state boards. After working in a cardiac ICU, I have excellent assessment skills and should be compensated for my level of schooling and experience. Jennifer Hayes, RN, Poplar Bridge. This is my 15th year, and I am disheartened by the lack of movement in the negotiations for the nurses and quotas. I have to work another job to make ends meet. My hope is that the district moves quickly towards settling a fair and equitable contract. It is what I pray for nightly. Janet Fox, Health Associate, Olson Elementary. We hear all the time how appreciated, valued, and important the nurses are for what they do for our kids. Why aren't they being compensated fairly for the work they do and the degrees that they have? Bryna Lester, Health Associate, Valley View Elementary, 14 years. After 14 years of service for the district in Valley View Elementary School, it is extremely disheartening to still be considered and described by the district as non-essential. As a non-essential staff member, I am held responsible for the health and well-being and support of 628 students, 100 staff members, and countless volunteers and visitors. Unable to complete the task involved in this position in the allotted time provided by the district, I work many hours unpaid. Not given the resources needed for my position, I spend an extra $200 to $500 each school year purchasing supplies needed in my office. In order to supplement this cost as well as my income to support my family, I work a second job in the evening and weekends. Respectful negotiations and comprehension of health service needs by the district would be the right thing for the district management to provide. And Elena Claire, RN, Oak Grove Elementary. I have been subbing in the district for almost 2 years before I started at Oak Grove full-time. Before this, I was working as a nurse for home care agency. I had to make a lifestyle change because I took a significant pay cut. That hasn't been easy, seeing as I have big student loans to pay off, plus all my living expenses, just like everyone else. Even though I'm not getting paid for the hours I stay late, I stay because I don't want to leave before my work is done. We as nurses work hard each and every day to make sure the children are healthy and happy. We are not only help the children, but we also help the staff if they ask. We love what we do, but we want to know that we are appreciated and compensated for what we do. Thank you for listening.
Excuse me, can I ask your name again?
Yes, it's Laurel Kuplick.
Laurel, I thank you. Generally, I'm asked to consider keeping statements to the board to 3 minutes or less, but you were actually reading a series of statements from different people. So instead of them coming to the microphone, I take that as being a number of different statements that you read for us. So I thank you for doing it that way and giving us that breadth of information from different people. Would those that follow you, however, be aware that we are looking to limit time so we can move on to other business. So 3 minutes or less, and please, if you bring some new information to us, that would be helpful as part of what you're presenting. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Culver, board members, Superintendent Fujitaki, cabinet members, and listening audience. My name is Jackie Johns. This is my 3rd year working as the health associate at Normandale Hills Elementary. I am here tonight because the nurses are now 836 days without a contract. When the settlement committee asked me to speak, I nervously said yes and proceeded to write about 3 lines that were very forceful and direct about feeling frustrated and underappreciated. This prompted me to delve deeper and to really think about why I feel so strongly about the nurses' unsettled contract. I'd like to share a little bit of my personal story. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from the University of Minnesota. I have worked in acute care settings in the areas of orthopedics, pediatrics, and internal medicine. I have done medical case management for an insurance company. My husband, Mike, and I reside in Bloomington and have 3 children that attend Normandale Hills Elementary. About 8 years ago, I made the decision to be a stay-at-home mom after my middle child, Abby, was diagnosed with a serious kidney condition, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Abby is 9 years old now and doing well, but does wear a medical alert bracelet as she requires special care in the event of an accident or illness. Abby is one of the reasons I became a nurse, a school nurse, and why I feel so passionately about the quality of care we have in our Bloomington schools. I think that many people assume that a school nurse just passes out ice packs and applies Band-Aids. I assure you this is not the case. On any given day, a nurse in the Bloomington School District may splint a fractured bone, refer a student with a concussion, administer rectal Valium for a student who is having a prolonged seizure, administer IV antibiotics so a student with a rare bone infection can attend school, assist a student with supraventricular tachycardia in slowing their heart rate to a safe level, suction a student with a tracheostomy, administer G-tube feedings and medications, take action to help save an accidentally extracted permanent tooth, change and care for a student with a vesicostomy, catheterize a student who can't void on their own, help to educate a newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic, find resources for medical, dental, and vision care for those students who don't have insurance, provide emotional support for kids having difficulties in life, provide snacks for those that are hungry. The list goes on and on. I know that these things are happening, as these are just examples from my school. This is a part of my story. I know that each nurse here in the district has their own story that is just as heartfelt and important to tell. These stories are why we, as a collective group, feel so strongly about being compensated fairly for the professional work we do. Bloomington made the right decision approximately 8 years ago when they adopted the RN model, the goal being to have an RN in every school. Now it is time to accurately compensate these professionals so that we can continue to attract and retain the quality of nurse Bloomington parents and students deserve. I will now read.
I am going to call time on you unless you're going to introduce somebody else.
I have statements written by colleagues.
No, I'm not going to let you do that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing those. And if you'd like to present those to us as a copy, either by email or a hard copy, we would welcome those statements.
Good evening.
Thank you for your consideration. Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Robin Roloff, and I'm a parent of 3 boys here at Bloomington Public Schools, 1 at Hillcrest and 2 at Olson Middle. It's 2 minutes and about 35 seconds.
Good timing.
Thank you. The nurses in Bloomington Public School System have played an important role in the lives of students for many years. Nurses know when children are sick. Normandale Hills, mid-1970s, a little girl used to visit the school nurse on a regular basis, hoping somehow that the nurse would believe the feigned illness and let this little girl go home so she could play outside. Finally, after months and months of trying, she finally got to go home. However, when her mother found her on the swing set later that afternoon feeling fine, the little girl was never allowed to go home sick again. A few years later at Olson Junior High, same girl, different nurse, same feigned illness from time to time. The nurse called this girl's mother, stating it was that the girl was in the nurse's office again, feeling sick. The nurse said, "I don't know if we should believe her." Then the girl threw up all over the floor in front of the nurse's desk. It only took 8 years for her really to honestly get sick. Needless to say, that day, I got to go home. Fast forward 20 years, nurses make the right calls. It's a field trip day for 4th graders to Orchestra Hall. A little blonde boy has a slight cough, but keeps it quiet as he boards the bus for downtown. His cough gets worse little by little, and his teacher starts to notice. During the concert, the teacher contacts the boy's mother by email, explaining to her that her son's cough sounds scary. But his mother is teaching and doesn't see the message. The watchful and attentive teacher calls back to Hillcrest to nurse Susie Duncan. The teacher tells Susie to have this little boy's inhaler ready when they return to school, assuming a cough so bad would warrant the use of an inhaler. Susie says calmly, "He doesn't have an inhaler." The boy's teacher begins to worry and describes the boy's cough as barking like a seal and his color as a little pale. Susie then advises the teacher to call an ambulance. "Are you sure?" the teacher asks. "Yes," replies Susie. "If he doesn't need to go, they won't take him." The teacher follows Susie's directives and she calls the ambulance. The boy's entire 4th grade class is enthralled as the ambulance arrives, and they all watch him being put in the ambulance. He is treated with epinephrine, but the boy doesn't react. He continues to turn more and more pale and continues to cough and struggles to breathe. He is then rushed to Children's Hospital. When his mother arrives at the hospital, she questions the necessity of the ambulance and his treatment because she knew somehow this field trip in the ambulance is going to be quite a bit more expensive than that $8 she paid for Orchestra Hall. The attending nurse replied sternly to my question, "You are lucky," the school nurse advised his teacher to call 911. He wouldn't have made it back to school without passing out, or he may have stopped breathing altogether. Susie's quick thinking, calm demeanor, and professional advice saved my son's life that day. Our nurses don't just put Band-Aids on owies, they administer controlled medications, which is a dangerous job. They follow strict guidelines, they tolerate, without complaining, mind you, the treatment of illnesses that causes the cleanup in aisle 6 of every nasty fluid from every which orifice. They treat our children when they are hurt on the playground or suffer a headache. They somehow are able to convince those second and third grade boys that their tummy ache might just be caused by the need to have to go to the bathroom. They are experts in looking for cooties. They counsel the occasional faker who should really just go back to class and calm the nerves of a panicked parent when their child is on the way to the emergency room. No matter what the ailment, the nurses are there to care for our children. It is their life's work. I rely on Susie Duncan and Diana Ekstrom every day as I go to work. I cannot just up and leave my 150 students to administer meds and decide if my kid is sick enough to go home or treat a headache. Ironically, the little girl who tried to go home sick so she could play outside became a teacher. Every year, my new students ask me, "Hey, Madame, why don't your kids go to school in our district?" I simply say, "I live in Bloomington, and it's one of the best school districts in the metro area." But continuing to be one of the best school districts includes settling contracts in a timely manner. My oldest son's fall on the playground in 2nd grade, hence his t-shirt that reads, famous last words, "Hey, watch this." And my youngest son's anguish of suffering from migraines since age 4 seemed to pale in comparison to the quote-unquote 2 field trip day, as my middle son calls it. That fateful day was less than 800 some days ago. Had the nurses given up on settling their contract, Susie had not been there to offer her advice, and my son had instead boarded the bus back to Hillcrest. Well, I shudder at the possibilities of how that day could have ended. Our children's well-being is of utmost importance. Our nurses put the well-being of our children first each and every day. Our district needs to do the same and swiftly come to an agreement. Our district cannot afford the loss of exceptional, high-quality, committed, caring, irreplaceable professionals that we call our school nurses. One can never repay the nurses in this district for all they have done for our families and our children, day in and day out, year after year, but settling their contract in a timely manner is the only acceptable way to start. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Denise Schneider. I'm the lead nurse at Kennedy. I'm a registered nurse and also hold certification as a public health nurse from the Minnesota Board of Nursing. I also am a licensed school nurse from the Minnesota Department of Education. As a licensed school nurse, I have many of the same continuing education requirements as teachers. I've been an RN for 5 years and I'm starting my 4th year with the district at Kennedy. Much has changed in the health office at Kennedy since I started. The number of students visiting the health office has increased dramatically in the past 4 years, from approximately 60 students per day to our current average of 80 students per day. That means we see a little more than 5% of the school population daily. These numbers do not include staff. As Laurel has mentioned, my coworker, we see and treat everything from paper cuts to new onset seizures. We do everything from providing bandages to monitoring students with life-threatening heart conditions. We are the first responders, the front line for students and staff who have questions and emergencies, the go-to experts on subjects ranging from bed bugs to the safety and efficacy of complementary and alternative medicines and therapies. I am telling you this because we have been 836 days without a contract, with over 16 months of negotiations and failed mediation attempts. We nurses are being told we have unsubstantiated increase in compensation, yet we are working daily with increasing numbers and decreasing support. Our jobs have become increasingly complex during a time in this country where the emphasis is on the importance of health care, and we nurses in the schools are being sought out instead of doctors and medical clinics because of forces beyond our control. I hope the statements you hear tonight will help you realize the responsibility we nurses have as we assess and treat the approximately 10,000 students and hundreds of staff, families, and volunteers in your district, and that we need to be compensated fairly for this responsibility and the work we do that promotes health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Please keep in mind time limitations and giving us new information where possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman. Superintendent
Good evening.
Taki, members of the school board, the cabinet, and people here tonight. My name is Chris Trineri, and my husband and I are parents of 3 children who attend the Bloomington Public Schools. I'm also a teacher in the district, a Bloomington taxpayer, and a voter. I'm here to support the healthcare associates, and I really ask you to do the same. From a parent's point of view, my son Jimmy has spina bifida and has benefited from the care of Donna Johnson at Southwood in his preschool years, and now gets care from Susie Duncan 2 to 3 times a day. Jimmy has an internal shunt, and Susie is trained to look at the signs for possible malfunctions. Jimmy also wears AFOs and twister cables. His skin integrity is crucial, and Susie is trained in this area. Jimmy is also on a bladder program. There's a complicated, sterile process that she uses to catheterize him in school so that he can be with his peers and stay dry during the day. She's also organized meetings to explain to all of the staff in our school that work with him his needs and concerns. My other sons, Andy and Tommy, are very active kids. They work hard and they play hard, and they could easily break an arm or hit their head on the pavement while here at Oak Grove. With the health concerns I have for Jimmy and my other 2 active kids, I am very reassured by the fact that they are under the care of a registered nurse. Knowing they're trained and able to care for them is reassuring to me as a parent. As a teacher who's also been around for a while, I've seen a huge increase in the medical concerns of the students. There are many more dangerous allergies to manage, many more medications to administer, attendance issues, mental health issues, the list goes on, as you've heard. It's important that these are handled with care and education. As I said before, I support the nurses, their dedication, and their knowledge, and I ask you to do the same. Please try to be creative and innovative during these negotiations for the sake of the Bloomington school kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, fellow board members, cabinet, and audience in attendance. My name is Chris Tollefson. I'm a first grade teacher at Valley View Elementary. I have to say I'm a reluctant public speaker, but I felt it important enough to come in front of you all to speak on support of the Bloomington's nurses. I don't honestly know what else I could say. There was, the speakers that came before me were so articulate, I can't add anything more to that, other than I say it's come down to what I feel is what we value. I know as a teacher I value the students, I value the staff that I work with, I value the support that I get from my administrator, and I just, as a fellow staff member, I just feel it's time that we support our nurses. And that involves selling a contract that's 836 days old.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy Schaff. I'm a resident of Bloomington. I'm also a teacher in the school district. I had not intended to speak until I heard these others. As a resident of Bloomington, you are asking me to vote yes on a referendum to improve school safety. When somebody gets past whatever security you put at the front desk and something horrible happens, who's in those buildings to take care of that situation? Because I can tell you as a teacher, I am not qualified.
Thank you all for addressing us and giving your perspectives on where things stand. I have been asked to read this statement. School Board Chair Talking Points prepared by Community Relations Office. Health Services Contract Response, October 14, 2013. The district and its health services, Bloomington Federation of Teachers, School Nurses Bargaining Unit have been negotiating a collective agreement for the 2011 to 13 and 2013 to 15 contract years for the past 18 months. While we prefer not to negotiate in public, members of the Health Services Bargaining Unit have repeatedly appeared before the school board to state their position. We feel it is important that an equal representation of the issues be made available to the public, and therefore we have chosen to share the district's position. The district has presented numerous financial offers within parameters set by the school board, and which were part of settlements with all the other employee groups. The Health Services Group has not provided any counter financial offer since negotiating began. The district parameters include 1% increase in salaries for 2011 to 12, and another 1% for 2012 to 13, and increases in district contributions toward health insurance for both years of the contract. In August, Superintendent Les Fujitaki met with health services employees, where two major themes emerged from that meeting. One, a desire by health services employees to be valued, and two, for administration to have a better understanding of what they do. To that end, the district has proposed a comprehensive review of its health service delivery model to be conducted by an outside expert. Finally, we wish to underscore that our efforts are focused on reaching agreement with the Health Services Bargaining Unit that addresses the concerns of its members and is within the district's negotiation parameters, the same parameters that our other employee groups have used to reach an agreement. I want to, in the name of the school board, thank you for coming today, those of you who spoke and others who came here in support. It's always helpful for us to have additional information and perspectives as we go through the negotiation process, so thank you again. Is there anyone else who would like to address the school board on an item that's not on the agenda? All right, seeing no one coming forward. This is a time for those of you who would need to leave for other commitments. You may go. And then we'll move to our Part A agenda items. Next on our agenda, Part A is generally those items which are not considered to be controversial or require individual votes on resolutions. Is there a motion for the approval of Part A agenda?
Move approval.
A motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the Part A agenda. Any discussion? Well, that's good. Then we're doing it right. We don't have anything we need to pick apart before we move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Part A agenda items are carried. We begin Part B agenda with item number 1, application for funds to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation. That does involve a motion for approval. Director Bergstrom.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll wait for it to calm down a little bit there. Be resolved, the School Board of Independent School District Number 271 approves the application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation for grants to be used to pay athletic and activity fees for students who qualify.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And we have at the table Chris Lennox, Assistant Superintendent, to give us background information.
Great. Thank you. Chairman Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, and members of the board. I'm here tonight simply to ask for your support of our district's annual application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation. The foundation awards grants annually to schools based on their need and their funds available. In the past, Bloomington has been awarded grants in the amounts ranging from $2,000 to $5,000. This money is then used for scholarships so that students who would not have been able to afford activity fees can then participate in our extracurricular activities. So at this time, administration is recommending approval of the grant resolution.
Are there any questions of the Assistant Superintendent? Any discussion of the motion? They'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The motion carries. The next item on our agenda, item number 2, instruction that beats the odds in second grade literacy.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, I'm very pleased to be here tonight to celebrate with you the great accomplishments of one individual teacher in Valley View Elementary, and also to just give you a couple of brief slides regarding the overall district improvement that came out just recently on the Minnesota multiple measures ratings. I'm not sure if, Carol, do we have the multiple measure rating one, the new one? Okay. Well, we'll do this one first.
This is the only PowerPoint I have.
Okay, the one from this morning. Okay, we'll start with teachers that beat the odds. First of all, I'll just mention from the multiple measures ratings, we will be giving a full presentation on the 28th, but Bloomington had the highest overall growth in math of any of the comparable districts in the whole state of Minnesota. What I did was I took down all of the demographics of each school district in the state, and then added up the percent free and reduced lunch, percent English language learner, and percent special ed to come up with something my colleague Jim Engemeyer called the challenge index. And using that challenge index then identified 10 school districts with similar demographics to Bloomington. They include Roseville, Hopkins, Mankato, Robbinsdale, North St. Paul, South St. Paul, St. Louis Park, Burnsville, and Rochester. And you'll get all the detail on this shortly. But the overall result was Bloomington had the highest overall increase on the Minnesota growth model. Minnesota growth model is something that's fairly new that you haven't heard too much about. It's the amount of learning that takes place from like 3rd grade to 4th grade or 4th grade to 5th grade, 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th, all measured on the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment, on the MCAs. And so it's a fair comparison. You compare yourself to a child just like you. So if I scored 350 in 3rd grade, what's the average score of all the kids that scored 350 in 3rd grade when they take the 4th grade test? Did I do better than the average or not? And you average all those things out. And so significant difference. For Bloomington, we had 40% of our students making high growth, whereas the state average is 32%. Burnsville, for example, had 30% making high growth. Richfield had 29% making high growth. So when you look across comparable districts, Bloomington had extremely high math results. And in reading, we also did better than the state average and better than most districts. The only two that had higher growth than Bloomington were Hopkins and Roseville. I also understand there were some questions about the Common Core, and I thought I would just mention briefly that the new state assessment in reading emphasizes areas of interpretive, inferential comprehension, whereas more of the previous MCAs were based on more literal comprehension. Also emphasizes vocabulary within the context of reading. And so it also, the Common Core now is setting standards way above what the old standards were. So the typical standard for like 3rd grade on the MCA 2 was at about the 35th percentile nationally. 35% of the students in the nation would not pass our MCA 2 assessment. Now the standard is at the 60th or 65th percentile. So 65% of the nation wouldn't pass our MCA 3 standard. So the Common Core has not only elevated the content of literacy, but the standards have been set at such a high level that we saw these big 10 to 20% drops across all the districts in the state. State average went down by 18 points. Bloomington went down by 16 points. So everybody is asking, why did all the scores go down? And this is the main reason, is that the state has set such a high bar, and now we're getting used to a new normal again. So what will happen is all of the parents in the district will be getting MCA results on starting the 23rd of October, and lots of students will have been proficient in the past, and then all of a sudden now they're partially proficient. So to be proficient, you actually have to be reading above grade level. These are extremely difficult standards, and we're all going to have to help communicate with parents. No, your child is still reading well. they're at the 50th percentile on the national norms on the map. They're partially proficient because the standards now are so high. So I'll give a lot more information on both the MMR and the new standards at the presentation on the 28th, but I know there are a couple of questions that we thought we'd address. So basically, world-class kind of results for Bloomington on the MMR. 12 out of our 15 schools all saw increases on their MMR ratings. All of the high schools and middle schools showed tremendous growth, and so we'll give you the detail coming up later. But Amber's been waiting patiently, and what I really want to talk about is how you apply a growth model to identify the teachers who are beating the odds. And so I've got just a brief 10-minute presentation on what value added is. This is the way that you determine the degree of productivity of our instruction. So we want to not only have high average test scores, but we want to have increases in those test scores at least as great as the typical student in the state. And that's basically the concept behind value added. It takes a statistical technique to separate the factors that teachers can't control, like poverty or special ed status, et cetera, and then isolate the impact of the teacher on the growth in reading or the growth in math. And we have a little graphic here that you might find useful. You take the previous year's assessment score, let's say second grade in the fall, and then you predict what would the typical student have in terms of a score in third grade. And then you see if the student scored higher than what was predicted, then the difference between the prediction and the actual is what's called value added. So whenever a student achieves more than typical students just like them, then you get a positive value added. If you achieve less, you have a negative score. You average them all out, and if you at least make 0, that would be making the state average in terms of growth for kids just like you. Another graphic that might be helpful is achievement is extremely important. We want all students ready for college. We track achievement in Bloomington with our pathways to graduation. We want to make sure all students are on track for their pathway. But be able to evaluate the effectiveness of our instruction, we need this value-added model that looks at the same students across time, looks at factors outside of the school's control, demographic factors, things like mobility and whether the student is coming from a background of poverty, et cetera. And then we want to isolate the impact of teachers in schools. So you need both. So you need both the achievement and the value added. But without the value added, we don't really know, who are great teachers out there that are producing even more growth than our typical teachers, and which schools in the state are producing more growth. MMR gets at that, and then this value added model adds a little bit extra to it. So here's the website if you'd really like to go online someday and just listen to a person who's has a much friendlier voice than I do, and we'll tell you all about the details of growing oak trees out in the world. I'm going to give you the little 5-minute version of the oak tree example, which is an analogy to what value added does in the educational setting. So out here in the world, we've got 2 trees. And we've got 2 gardeners. And these gardeners are going to grow these trees. And we want to know which gardener is the best gardener. And so you could, they've been tending the trees for 3 years. This is the 3rd year of treating the trees. Let's see who's the best gardener. So one thing we could do would be just measure the trees. Which tree is taller? And you can see over here, gardener B, tree is 72 inches taller, and gardener A's tree is 61. You could say then, well, gardener B must be the best gardener, right? Because he's got the taller tree. That would be a analogous to the achievement model, just looking at like percent proficiency on a state test. But what are we missing? Well, I'm just asking rhetorical questions. If I was actually doing this with teachers, we would have a discussion of what is missing. But let me suggest that what we're missing is the previous year's height of the tree. Where was the tree last year at this time? Well, you can see that Gardner B's tree was at 52 inches, already taller than Gardner A's tree at 47 inches. Now you might think, okay, all we have to do is subtract what the tree height was last year from this year's height, and we would see 20 inches of growth for Gardner B and 14 inches for Gardner A. And we would say, oh, well, Gardner B must be the best gardener because his tree grew more in this last year. But then I would ask, what are we possibly missing from the picture other than how tall the tree was last year? Well, you can see that Gardner A's tree is growing in an environment that looks a lot different than Gardner B's. Gardner B over there has the fruited plain. Gardner A is in the mountainous regions. So does environment have any effect on trees? So actually, we're going to suggest that three things affect trees. One would be the heat. The high temperature tends to stagnate tree growth. You can see on the left side, the purple environment has lousy soil. It looks like gravel or something. And on the Gardner B side, the soil is like rich Red River soil. So that's an advantage for Gardner B. Also, the lower temperature is an advantage for Gardner B. So, well, Gardner A has more rain. Rain you would think would be a help. So we factor in all these factors, and then we make a prediction. We find out that rainfall does have an impact. So we make a prediction that's 3 inches taller for the Gardner A because he's got lots of rain. But soil condition goes against Gardner A, and temperature really goes against Gardner A. So when you factor in all these environmental factors, you find out that compared to a prediction that includes the pretest, or where the tree was before last year, and the environmental conditions, Gardner A actually made better growth than predicted. So when you take into account the factors that Gardner A was working with his tree in this hypothetical example, you would say that actually Gardner A did a better job growing his tree. So this is analogous to value added. It's the amount of growth that the gardener added over and above what you would predict. Now, those predictions are made on all the trees in the forest. You collect all this data about all the trees growing in each region. You get the average, and you see what impact does soil condition have. Well, soil condition might be like poverty. Poverty has a huge impact on student test scores. And English language learner status has a huge. So when we move over to the environment of education, we're talking not about gardeners, but about the growth of standardized test scores, and we're talking about groups of students. And the factors that we want to take into account include what grade level the student's at, what gender. Boys tend to grow more than girls at the early age. Race, ethnicity, low-income status, ELL, and disability. You could also factor in homeless status, which I did in Minneapolis when I was doing value added, and how many different homes the student lived in during the year, or other kinds of indications of mobility. So this is just background to some tremendous results. What I did last year was to get all of the results from 2009-10, 2010-11, 2011-12, and find out in second grade which teacher or teachers produced the highest growth when you control for all these environmental factors, and it turned out to be Amber. And so one of my colleagues came in. Amber was nice to allow her to come in and videotape for an hour, and we collected all these interesting pictures of the kids, so thoroughly engaged with their learning, and then talked to Amber about what were the keys to her instruction. So initially, I was going to try to present a videotape, and I'm thinking for the interest of time, I'm just going to turn it over to Amber. But what you would have seen in the videotape, in the first section, it would be students being engaged in learning about a story, about a child who's living in a different country in Mexico, right? And so then she's got the vocabulary in Spanish that she's teaching the children. And then the third section was about the embedded vocabulary throughout the story. And so I was really impressed with the vocabulary lesson and asked Amber, you know, what it was that really, you know, influenced the students' learning. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to Amber because she's got a nice story to tell.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here. So when Dave asked me to step up and talk about what I think was the key to the growth that I had, I blanked for a little bit. I didn't know exactly to pinpoint. We at Valley View do so much for our kids. But first and foremost, what I really think it came down to was the group of girls that I've been working with for the past 5 years at Valley View. We get along so well, and we have fun planning, and we work together for our kids. And one of the things that I think was the biggest thing, like David mentioned, was the vocabulary instruction. A few years ago, we had an EL teacher at our school, Nicole Walters, who was phenomenal. And she went through our curriculum of making meaning and created these little word cards. And it has for every story that we teach in making meaning. So we use this kind of as the catalyst to do that. And we have a curriculum map that our team has designed throughout every subject area every month. And we mapped it out to make sure that the skills and concepts on the CULT test, which is now the map, has been correlated and has hit somewhere throughout the year. I think that's been just a really driving force in making sure that we're teaching what we need to be teaching our students. So going back to the making meaning, that's the curriculum we use to teach comprehension in second grade. Typically the lessons in the curriculum are sort of dry, 1 to 2 days, and it teaches one specific strand. What we've done in the last year or two is taken each lesson and stretched it out throughout a week instead of just spending a day or two on it. And we're really focusing on the main reading comprehension skills. So every week kids are getting direct vocabulary instruction. Every week they're building background and activating their schema. Every week they're predicting, retelling, making connections. And we switch the reading strategies throughout the week as the stories change. A lot of the other important things I think that are helping the growth is there's a lot of differentiation going on. We have, even for retelling a story, 2 to 3 sometimes different formats to meet our EL kids with picture cues. We have open-ended responses for our higher students and just some sorting sentences for our average students as well. I would probably say the biggest thing though for me is I hold myself really accountable and I have really, really high expectations for myself. And so I instill that into my students, and I know they come from poverty and tough home lives, but when they come into my classroom, they know it's a safe place to be, and they know that I am holding them accountable for their behavior and for their academic learning as well. So I could keep going on and on forever, but I think that's the biggest thing is that my team has really worked together, and I think we're pretty solid and we like what we're doing. We have a really good direction that we're going, and so that's all I've got.
So Amber went back to school to getting a master's degree in differentiated education, and has great skills in knowing how to identify strategies for kids that are struggling, but also strategies for kids at the top. And a great support from her team and her principal, Andy Kubas, and it really is exciting to come over to Valley View and get a chance to spend some time with the staff there. So any questions that you would have, we'd be glad to entertain. Dick?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. The chair is supposed to recognize.
Director Bergstrom.
Yes, first, let me say thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It's always, David, it's always a pleasure to pick your brain.
Thank you.
Amber, I have to say thank you. Let's just say, we'll start with 1,000,000 times. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for what you're doing in the classroom. Do your students have an option or an opportunity to give you feedback on what they like and what maybe they don't like? Can they come up and say, teacher, I don't like this?
I try to make my classroom as open as possible. In fact, at the end of the school year, I give them, just like I hand out report cards, I have them fill out a teacher report card for me, and it's got a bunch of different strands. Do you think I have a sense of humor? Do you think just different things like, do you think I'm fair? And if they tell something is a no, they have to explain to me why they chose that way. I sometimes think I should almost give that at the middle of the year too, just so they have, more sense of feedback with me, but good question though.
Okay. And then just the flip side of that, do they ever tell you what they like?
All the time.
Okay.
They make it known.
So they make that known?
Yes.
Sometimes when I go into classrooms and I talk to the kids, it's hard for them to tell an adult, no, I don't like this. And they just kind of push it aside. So,
right.
well, I really appreciate what you're doing and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Hibbs.
So, Dr. Heisted, I guess I've certainly been aware of this concept of value added for a long time, but your example actually got me thinking about something, and so I'm just going to say this, and I'm looking for both of your responses to this.
Sure.
The first is that if I were a teacher, I can see precisely why I would like the use of this model, because it does address all the other factors that are external to my teaching. But if I'm a consumer of public school students, whether that be an institution of higher education or an employer, I think my response would be, that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. I'm looking against an absolute standard. It doesn't matter that kid, demonstrated astronomical growth when you account for all the factors. If they don't meet the standard that I need as an institution of higher ed for them not to need a bunch of remedial classes, or as an employer not to need a bunch of extra support.
Sure, I get it. This is the question that's asked frequently. And I think, there are a couple of analogies that I like to refer to. The first is that you can't get to proficiency unless you have strong learning growth, unless you're born as a prodigy and you're already at 12th grade and first grade. So the only way to get to 12th grade level skills is by making exceptional growth. But it's like if you were going to go to an investment firm, you might be very interested in who's got the biggest portfolio, who's got, the most money that they're managing and the most, wealthy clients. But what you're really interested in is how they do versus the average for the market. You want to know whether they produce a better return for you than another broker. So I'd rather go to a broker that doesn't have such a huge portfolio that is getting me 12% return, rather than a broker that's got this huge portfolio and is only getting 6% return. So in the case of value added, we're identifying schools, classrooms, grade level teams that are highly productive. And in that way, we can learn from them, try to replicate what they're doing so that other schools. Now, some of the teachers that were right next to Amber's in terms of growth were from gifted classrooms. So you can produce high growth with high achieving kids and high growth with low achieving kids. Typically, No Child Left Behind has paid no attention to how much growth is taking place. They've only given accolades or punishments based on the proficiency level. But I would argue that, finding the teachers in the classrooms and the schools that produce the highest growth for high poverty kids is really critical if we're going to narrow the achievement gap. Amber's probably got a different take on this.
My thoughts with that is, it just kind of goes back to the basics, is that kids don't learn to tie their shoes at the same time. Kids don't learn to do sports and things the same way. And I mean, especially with the population of ELs that we have at our school and the mobility that the kids at my school have. I mean, by chance in second grade, some of the kids have been to 6 or 7 different schools. I feel like there's a lot of interrupted learning that they've had in the past too. And so for me to be able to start them, typically it's a grade level behind in reading or so far behind, and to get them to grade level at least in second grade and to produce these results, that's all I can ask for. You know, I'm working hard and the kids are working so hard, you know, so.
But then I think in between the lines are questions about social promotion and also questions about should students have to pass a test or demonstrate proficiency in order to get a high school diploma, which of course now we've moved away from that. So, you know.
For individual students, you want to have high standards and have all students reach those high standards. I think we're confusing maybe the model for evaluating our effectiveness versus the standards that we set for individual students. So that's why that power of 2, you need the overall achievement level to be high. You want to have high standards. You want all kids to get into college. But if I'm evaluating the effectiveness of our programs here in Bloomington, I want to make sure it's an apples-to-apples comparison. And that's why we chose similar districts rather than comparing us to districts that have no poverty. It's really important to, when you're evaluating your effectiveness, not to beat yourself up because not 100% of your kids are proficient yet, but to look at how much progress we're making with the kids that we have, and are we doing better than you know, national average or state average, or in this case, other colleagues in the field. So it's both and, I think.
Then what are you going to do with, I guess I'm trying to understand, so, you know, Amber's a superstar, but somewhere else in the district, someone's got similar demographics in their classroom and they're struggling, so are you going to use that information to somehow help that other teacher?
Sure. That's what curriculum instruction will be doing, is using the examples of the most effective instruction from across the nation as well as internally to you know, train people on what this Common Core really requires, you know, and to see, you know, success in different parts. So that's what I would hope would be. When I did the Teachers That Beat the Odds in Minneapolis, we had 15 kindergarten teachers that had the highest growth. They created their own videos as well as the videos that we created. We put them on the website and people referred to them all the time. And so it can be a nice example. Also, maybe later in Amber's career, she'd like to become a staff development person or occasionally come to a staff development to share her strategies. So there are different ways. And some people have even suggested taking the Beat the Odds teachers and moving them to the highest need areas and trying to concentrate. There are all sorts of potential uses for the value added, but the cool thing for me is to show how fantastic our instruction is. And sometimes you miss the fact as you're getting higher percent poverty come into your district. In Minneapolis, the scores were going down every year in terms of percent proficient, but their poverty level went from 20% to 65% in a fairly short period of time. But when you looked at the schools that were producing the highest growth, some of those schools that had low proficiency were some of the superstars in terms of producing growth. So the accountability system that we're proposing for Bloomington has both and. It would be how are we doing on the pathways, but also which are our most productive grade level teams and what kinds of strategies are they using so that we can replicate this in other places. And Amber immediately gave credit to her colleagues, that it was her colleagues that helped her understand how to do vocabulary embedded in the curriculum. They all worked together on it. So this PLC idea and the team, that seemed to be a really big component.
Yeah.
So who will figure out, though, what the difference is between Amber and that hypothetical teacher who's struggling And how do they do that?
Well, that's what the whole field of research and evaluation and education does, is you use control groups to be able to see if a particular intervention is producing higher results than a similar group of students controlling for demographic characteristics. And so the whole What Works site on the federal clearinghouse is all these studies that have used control groups, similar to what we did with identifying Amber. They're identifying strategies that are most likely to produce higher reading and math results. So we rely on the research as well as our own evaluations of our current programs. Similar to what we did in preschool, we found that our preschool program was producing higher growth and eventual proficiency at the kindergarten assessment than a group of kids that didn't have our preschool program. We'll continue to do those match comparison evaluations, which are very similar. That's the basic idea for value added, is control for things that teachers can't control, find out how much learning is taking place, and then replicate that kind of learning. These are great questions, Mark.
Other questions or comments? Director Corman.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Amber, for caring. You know, this is it's all because of your efforts and also because of the teamwork. You know, when you have the support from the administration and all the other staff members, you can really see progress. I am curious to know, since we talk so much about parent involvement being such a huge deal in students' education, in their kids' education, and in progress, academic progress and success. What have you seen as you have experienced that progress in your students? What have you seen in the parents? What has been their role, and what changes have you seen in the past 3 years?
To be honest, I have had a few parent volunteers in my classroom, and I can probably count on one hand in the 5 years that I've been teaching the amount of direct parent involvement in the classroom I've seen. For me, the biggest parent involvement that I have is being able to communicate about what's going on at school just via phone or email. And we're really working hard at Valley View with our new parent liaison to incorporate more family and parent involvement in our school. I would say, though, the biggest thing that I've really is the homework help at home. We've tried to revise our homework in second grade just to make it more teaching responsibility rather than reinforcing the skills and having the parents just help out when needed. So to be honest, I don't see a lot of direct parent involvement in my own classroom.
Do you have volunteers from the community?
Yes, I use some of the volunteers from the America Reads and the tutoring programs in Normandale Hills. So we get a weekly reader coming in to help buddy read with students. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And as we see progress in our students, what do the parents know? What are the parents hearing? Are they hearing, your student is doing pretty good, or are they hearing something like, we're doing really great, but we can probably do better?
Yeah.
I know we don't exactly say it like that, but is that kind of the message we're trying to send as well?
I'm finishing up my last night of conferences tomorrow night, actually, so we just had really good turnouts. Everybody's made it so far, which is fabulous. But I am honest with parents if I do see some major concerns. I say, this is where they're coming in, but we really are focused on goal setting and using the STAR reading chart to make sure that all of our students are reading on grade level by 5th grade. And I show them exact tips and strategies that they can use at home. Here's some questions to ask while you're reading with your students. Here's some things to do to practice basic math skills at home. And I do want them to know, your child, this is where they're at, but this is where they're going to get. And I know we can do that if I'm doing my part and you're doing your part, as well as your students doing their part at home.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
It does, and the reason I ask is because culturally speaking, and I know that you have a lot of immigrants, it is really important for certain communities to hear that, to not only hear, your student is doing really great, just because we know that even though they live in very hard situations and come from, tough stories, that they're doing good. And so sometimes if we hear, oh, they're doing great, then we assume that nothing else needs to be done.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, even at the kids that I have that are above grade level right now, it's still, well, this is where we're still gonna push that envelope, we're still gonna get them further than they were and continue to goal set. That's the biggest thing for me.
Thank you.
Yes, Superintendent Fujitaki.
Yesterday, I had an inspiring and eye-opening experience. Yesterday, I gathered with a number of our district employees, and we gathered to help out one of our teammates. We gathered because that teammate needed help, but we also gathered because we wanted to show how much we appreciated that employee, provide our support, and recognize the great work that employee does. And the spirit of teamwork and camaraderie was impressive. But it also, the eye-opening thing was the importance of valuing and recognizing our teammates, the great work. So I'm really glad that you're here tonight to be recognized, Amber.
Thank you.
For your great work. And Dave's going to be coming back in 2 weeks to share more information about the MMR results. It's very impressive. We are moving the needle, both in achievement and in closing the gap. So this has been a banner year for us. And I want to share with you why I think it's a banner year and why we're being successful. On the screen is our mission statement. Our community expects us to prepare our children, their children, to be successful. And they know because of the growth in knowledge and the way the world is changing, we need to be educational leaders to keep up and stay ahead of all this change. And the way we're doing that is by giving individuals, students, a pathway to graduation. And this is our message. It's all on the boards there. This is the way we'll fulfill our mission with this vision. And the power of this is it unites our team. It gives everybody a shared vision of where we're heading. And I want to share with you some of the results on a student level. The 340 high schools in Minnesota, 33 perfect scores. That's 1 out of every 10 schools having a perfect score student. We had 3 perfect scores. No other district had 3 or more perfect scores in the state. In the classroom level, we have Work Like Amanda. We have the flipped classrooms. I'm sorry, Amber. We have the flipped classrooms instruction that we showed a few months ago. And then we had digital backpacks. These teachers are educational leaders. Doesn't have to necessarily be the district. It could be educational leaders in the classroom. And they're making a difference. On the community level, there's a national community survey. The city of Bloomington participated that for the 2nd year. This year's results showed that on the education section, our city ranked first among the benchmark cities. We followed it up with our own district survey. We contracted with our surveyor, who's done this survey for us for over 20 years. And he did this in July. His findings is he's never seen faster growth improvement in the respondents than any district that he surveyed. Our teachers received a 90% approval rating. And this ranked top in the state for this year of the district survey. And he said these are the highest results ever for this district, and he's been surveying our district for over 20 years. These are impressive results. When we look at our neighbors, Dr. Heisted's on the 28th of the month, this month, will talk about celebration schools. It's one of the classifications. Last year, we had one celebration school, and these were our neighboring results, neighboring district results. This year, we've doubled our number. We have more celebration schools in our neighboring districts. This is on a regional basis. Google has started an education division, and their regional representative has met with our teams our technology teams, and they say we're heading in the right direction. That's their assessment. And last week, we just learned that a superintendent in Iowa wants to bring up 30 of his teachers to visit our district to learn about our PLC system. That's a compliment to the teachers, the work that's being done in this district when another state superintendent brings their teachers to see what we're doing here. Nationally, we had 2 education leaders come and visit our early childhood program. Secretary Duncan in July just came to see our district, to see our early childhood program in our state. And last month, NEA President Dennis Van Rokel came to visit us to again see our early childhood program. These again, this 2013 has been a banner year for our district, and everybody's done tremendous work. It's the result of a team effort. Everyone's working as a team, working together to produce these results. And I want to take away what I learned yesterday, and that is recognize and show our appreciation for the great work that's being done in this district. And I'd like to ask everybody to join. I think these are remarkable results. Dr. Heisted says the results that he's seen in the MMR and other measures that he tracks, we're doing tremendous work, and we're comparing ourselves with other districts with like demographics, and we're ranking at the top compared to those districts. And this is the testament to the work that the teachers and the entire team are doing. So I want to compliment everyone, and I'd like to ask, I'm going to do something. I think Cabinet and the board should show our appreciation for the great work that's being done by the team and the teachers and the rest of the staff and the community, the parents and everyone working together. This is a great accomplishment. So thank you very much for joining us, Amber.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much for having me. Thank
Best
you.
wishes.
Tim, I would
Yes,
just like
Director
to
Bush.
add, with all my past state and metro involvement I've had with school districts, I'm always saying I'm thankful to be on the Bloomington School Board. I'm sure you would all agree.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the time you spent with us to bring us up to date on how you're looking at the research and how we will continue to learn about value added and student assessment. Item number 3 on our agenda, the Bloomington Public Schools Annual Report, 2012-2013.
Mr. Chair?
This is an action item. Yes, Director Bartolotta.
Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 accepts the annual report for the 2012-2013 school year.
Second.
Our Executive Director of Community Relations, Rick Kaufman, is at the table to present information to us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you,
Rick.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujaki, members of the board, and our viewing and public, and those here. It is hot off the presses. We just received these late this afternoon, so that is why you're getting a hard copy of them. But this is the 2012-2013 annual report on curriculum instruction and student achievement that's required by the state. All items that are contained in the report are mandated by the state. I want to give credit where credit is due. Andrea Alice, our communications specialist, coordinated the annual report this year in the writing, content, design, layout, working with graphic artists, and also to Dr. Heisted, who assisted in ensuring the information on the test results were accurate and within what MDE information is provided, and Dr. Tim Anderson, who works with our curriculum advisory committee of parents and the work that they provide as part of this required report. So it is my pleasure to give to you the 2012-13 annual report for your review, perusal, and acknowledgement of the continued great work of the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there commentary, questions? So when was this report printed?
Came off the presses today.
Came off the presses today?
Right.
Okay.
We wanted to assure that the board had an opportunity to review it prior to printing, which is why we sent it out to the board members for review. Hearing no recommended changes after the other vetting processes, we move forward for printing. So as we've done in the past, this is an online publication. It will, the report will be provided not only on our website, but also the school's websites. And following your approval this evening, the public will receive specific as well as required notification of where the annual report can be found. We do print a couple hundred copies, though, because they are used for a variety of purposes, for requests by persons that are outside the state or outside Bloomington looking, doing some shopping and would like some additional information. Some realtors also request copies for use as well. That's why we print I think a couple hundred copies.
So if I may ask, Mr. Kaufman, this has already been posted to the school district website?
Not yet. We have to wait for the school board approval.
I'm looking at it on the school district website right now. I called it up on the website, and I'm reading it from the website and following along with what you have here. So it's been posted.
Okay.
In the detailed background, it indicates the District Curriculum Advisory Committee reviewed and approved the curriculum content that appears in the publication in the last paragraph. Correct?
Yes.
Did the school board review and approve curriculum content before it was published?
I can't answer that because I don't know if that's the school board's authority or if it's the curriculum committee's responsibility for that review and approval. Under the state MDE requirements, that's Curriculum Advisory Committee's role.
And the background information then says 2012-2013 annual report will be produced as non-online publication. It has been produced as non-online publication, though, correct? It's already been put on, it's been made available. It's on the website now. And then it says a link to the report will be provided.
That's correct.
Then I'm wondering what we're doing here tonight. Why do we have this resolution? Because, in fact, you've gone forward with having it printed and having it distributed, and then you're passing it by us for our information after the fact when there's really nothing that we could do to edit it or comment on it that would make any meaningful difference. So
Mr. Colbury, we sent this copies to the school board in a timely fashion, as we do each year. The school board, please let me finish.
You interrupted me, sir, but I'll let you finish, and then I will speak my...
Excuse me.
This is ridiculous.
Let's calm this down.
Rick, I'm sorry.
My name is Dick.
Nobody's not...
Calm it down,
Nobody's
all right?
not calm here. Would you settle down, please? We're having a conversation.
This is not a conversation. This is a grilling.
Yes, it is.
Calm down.
I think I'm calm. I'm asking whether there's a need to even act on this because the publication's already been done, and I think that I would like to hear what the rationale is for why this even comes to the board if the board is not actually expected to have an approval of this process and what goes in the text. What are we doing here?
It was presented to the board upon completion and review of the various different groups that vet it. The board members were asked to review and provide comment and input before it was published. We did not receive any comments from board members regarding the publication that was sent to you, each of you. Thus, we move forward, as we do each year, in having copies made and linked and present to the board as required by MDE.
Okay, so it's your interpretation that advance approval of the school board is not required for any of the items in here or for the overall report. Is that correct?
I'm not in a position to give you my personal opinion as to what the state requires. I'm simply following what we've done each year in accordance with MDE mandates.
Okay, and then who in administration made that decision that the school board did not need to review and approve this before publication? Can you share that with me?
I cannot.
Okay, would the superintendent care to speak to that?
We followed past practice of how we did business. That's the way we've done it in the past, and we continue to do it that way.
Okay, so your recollection is that the school board never approves an annual report in advance. We always receive a pro forma request that we approve it after it's already beyond the point that any changes could be made because of what we have to comment. Is that correct?
This year, in response to a comment or comments made by school board last year, that the board did not have an opportunity prior to printing to review it. Thus, we did send it to the board. Every board member received it. I would call on Ms. Bunkholt to give us the date, but we provided adequate time over a week for the board to review the document, provide comments, feedback, or suggested revisions. We did not receive any in a timely fashion. We moved forward so that we were prepared to present and give to the board this evening.
What if I interpreted the fact that in previewing the agenda for a number of weeks, I saw that there was a resolution for acceptance was actually on an agenda tonight for approval? Why would I think that I needed to provide comment in advance, and why would I think that it wouldn't require discussion and majority vote of the board for anything I wanted to see different?
I can't answer a question that you would find an answer only that you can ask. I can provide you an answer what you're asking, Mr. Culver.
I'm asking, as the chairman of the school board, what is the power and responsibility of the school board in this regard? It appears to be to provide pro forma approval after the fact, unless we plan on sending this back to the printers and removing it from the district website. And I don't think we're going to do that. So what is the real role the board has? I mean, my view as chairman, this is not a real role. This is a symbolic after the fact, and what people in the community tell me they don't want a school board to be. That is rubber stamping things after the fact. I don't want to be the rubber stamp here, and I'm sorry that I'm put in a position that I need to raise what I would think would be obvious procedural points to anybody that works with a decision-making body. But having said that, I'm coming closer to saying I don't want to vote approval of this, because then we're just doing oh boy, we're just doing what we're being told to do without having a chance to have a serious conversation as a board.
Mr. Culver, you or no other board member gave us revision or suggested changes. I'm not sure how that is different from moving forward with approval of the report this evening.
Are you not understanding that there's an item on the agenda tonight for majority approval that should be our action, and that I reserve the opportunity to converse with you and with others about this report? Why would I think that you're polling us individually? That's not our role as board members, is to give you individual feedback and have you reach a consensus decision from your own. I don't know what anybody else had to say. I won't know until we're at the table together. We're not supposed to be talking about board business outside of this room. How would I know? I'm not happy. Superintendent Fujitaki.
We're following past practice, Mr. Chair, and this is the way we've done it for years. If you want to change the procedure, you can vote this thing down, we can go back again and do another process. We have a time limit, which is, when does it have to be done, Rick?
We've actually passed that, as most school districts do, because the state gives us waivers because of the results with delay in the MMR and the MCA results.
So,
How
Dr.
come
Bush.
you haven't questioned this before when we received the annual report? What's going on now?
There's an election in 3 weeks, that's what's going on.
No, I don't think that's funny either. You know, we really need to be, you know, if we're asking the chair what he's saying things the way he's saying them, I think we should also refrain from jumping up and making comments on other comments, just out of respect for people who are at that table. I don't think it's funny either.
Well,
we all laugh.
I would truly hope that the respect is equally given to the presenters at the table, that I'm giving you the information as Mr. Fujitaki has provided. This has been past practice. We actually changed our practice a bit this year to allow school board members to review the document and provide insights, comments, suggested changes, and revisions. For 5+ days, we've not received any kind of comments. We thus moved forward so that tonight we were able to have a document to present to the board, as well as a resolution. If next year you wish to change the process, we will be happy to change the process. Bring to the board the draft before it's printed, and allow the board to provide recommendations for suggested revisions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I hear you.
Director Corman.
I totally hear you. I understand what you're saying, and I did look at the report. I didn't have any comments. I thought it was well done. Okay, I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think the issue here tonight is, why it was, several copies of them was printed and also put on the website without previous approval from the board. Now, this is my second year. I'm in my second year on the board, so I would like to understand more, why this process has been done that way in the past years, and if this is the right way to do it. I also like to see approval from the board before we go ahead and print a bunch of those copies, or even put it in the website.
Director Hibbs.
Mr. Chair, yes, I just think the main issue here is that it's already been distributed publicly before the board has a chance to pass the resolution, so I don't have any issue with the way it was distributed to the board beforehand. I think that was appropriate. I expressed some concerns to the superintendent. They weren't of the nature that required any particular editing. They were more in terms of your presentation to make sure the public clearly understood some of these new statistics around testing. But again, sort of to the chair's point, if it's already going to be out there, then it sort of seems pointless to bring this as a resolution in front of the board.
Is there any other comment, debate, information requests? Then let's move to the vote. All those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And it carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being at the table. We come to item number 4, a proposal from Wifley LLP for organizational development consulting. And we have from Wifley LLP, Seth Feinsack and Sophie Kelly to provide some further information. Do I hear a resolution?
Mr. Chair.
Director Hibbs.
Resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 accepts the proposal from Wifley LLP to provide board development and strategic planning advisory services to Bloomington Public Schools and its leadership and governance groups.
I'll second it.
Mr. Chair, I move to table this item until the new board is in place and has enough time to accumulate whatever they need to accumulate and learn. Sorry, that's pretty vague and ambiguous, but there's an election coming in 3 weeks. We're going to have new board members. I think it's improper and imprudent to put this recommendation before us. I move to table this resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. It's open for discussion as to the tabling.
There is no discussion with a table motion.
Not unless that was determined to be a specific date.
Well, okay. So moving to table until January 2nd? I mean, are we talking about a specific date? That would be something we could do?
That would be debatable.
Or we could table it to our next meeting?
You can do that anytime.
That would be debatable. All right.
Anytime you table to a specific date, it's debatable. Just the tabling motion is not.
All right. Thank you for your clarification. Appreciate that.
Just to
Mr. Holman.
clarify, if I may, my motion to table was at some point in the future, after the new board is sworn in, they've had enough time to learn what they're doing.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No?
No.
Looks like we might have to do that alphabetical thing again here. Just to be sure we have a clear vote here. Director Ablin.
Voting no against the motion to table.
Against the motion to table. Director Bartolotta.
Yes.
Director Bergstrom.
Yes.
Director Hibbs? Director Bush, I'm sorry. I'm going to number these because I don't think this is the last time we're going to be doing this tonight and in the future, it looks like. Director Bush?
Yes.
Okay, Director Hibbs?
No.
And Director Corman?
No.
Chair votes no. It's 4-3 not to table. We have at the table resource people who can explain what it is they're going to do in terms of consulting should they win a contract with the school board. And I would speak to the previous comment by Director Bergstrom about not having information about what would be involved in this process at the outset of the meeting and wanting to remove it from the agenda. This is our opportunity then to get that information. So I appreciate WIFLE representatives being here. They'll introduce themselves, and they have some further information to share with the board.
Good. Thank you, Chairman Culver, school board, all members,
Oh, yeah.
Superintendent Fujitaki, cabinet members. My name's Seth Feinstack. I'm a consultant with WIFLE CPAs and Consultants. I'm joined by Sophie Kelly. It's late in the evening. The last thing you probably want to hear from is CPAs. Good thing that both of us are not CPAs. We're with a very large multidisciplinary firm called WIFLE. We were founded in Wausau, Wisconsin over 82 years ago. We're now over 1,000 employees, 22 offices. We have national practices in the nonprofit world, which is most relevant to you. We represent a couple of different teams within that firm. We're located here just north of Bloomington and Edina, as well as an office in Woodbury and other offices across the, as I said, region and country. I am an organizational development specialist. I was trained in change management in the corporate world and subsequently moved into what my passion would be, which are mission-driven organizations, and have been serving both general community-based nonprofits, grant-funded nonprofits, school boards, school districts, and other varieties of nonprofits for the last 7 or 8 years. And so I'm happy to be here. Thank you for your invitation to present some of our services, what we offer, and what we can help you with potentially.
Yes, good evening. I'm Sophie Kelly. I work with Seth at WIFLE, and good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Superintendent Fujitaki, board members and cabinet members and the listening public. Thank you for hearing our proposal tonight, and hopefully we can give you information that will help you make a decision about how you would like to proceed. I've spent my career in business, much of it in banking. I also have been the owner and CEO of a software consulting company, and today I work at WIFLE in board governance. I do a lot of work with boards, and often boards in changing environments, dealing with change. It's very common that there are different views and different perspectives, and we use a lot of processes to help boards achieve alignment. And I also work in strategic planning. I've served on multiple boards throughout my career in the nonprofit world, and look forward to giving you a little more information and hopefully also entertaining any questions.
Good. We have built a small presentation to go along and complement our proposal. I think each of the board members, I wanted to confirm, have received a copy of the proposal dated October 2nd and addressed to Bloomington Public Schools. So I can go through that proposal step by step if you needed more specifics, if you had questions about that, and I also could go through the PowerPoint. I'll default to the PowerPoint unless you would request that I go through the proposal.
Yes, Director Bergstrom.
I have questions, and it's based on the proposal because I haven't seen the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Would you like the questions first? Would you?
I think probably most of you will have some kind of variety of questions, so I would respect your questions and want to hear them and answer them to the best of our ability, but maybe go through the PowerPoint to give you some context and understanding of how we come to the table, who we are, what we bring, some of the options that you might have.
It's a very brief PowerPoint.
That's fine.
Okay, good. And I'm not, there we go. So what we recognize with all of our school districts, school clients, boards of education, as well as many nonprofits, is that you are operating in a very dynamically changing education environment as you portray in your mission statement. All of your learners will have the ability to thrive in a rapidly changing world. What we have identified is the need for leadership, both board and administration, management, teachers, teacher representatives, and others to operate just as dynamically, just as thriving in the same kind of changing education environment. Some of the ways that the environment is changing that we recognize, although we're not experts in by any stretch of the imagination. We are process experts, organizational development experts, and very much deep in the areas of board governance, strategic planning processes, goal setting, measurement, scorecarding, et cetera. We do recognize that you face quite a few challenges, some of them on the screen. Evolving standards. Dave, who spoke eloquently earlier, was talking about the evolving standards and how they're moving targets, how they're growing, and how the bar is being set higher and higher. Demographics in this district in particular. Sophie and I border your district. I'm part of District 196 and a proud parent of people, children in public education. I'm a product of public education myself. New Trier, which is a well-known school in Winnetka, Illinois. My bar is set very high, and I look for that in my clients as well. Languages in schools are increasingly evolving and growing in the number of languages, the depth, the English language learners. Achievement gap, measurement, NCLB, funding, technology, economic uncertainty, the impact of poverty in public school, which we're both very familiar with many of our clients dealing with community action programs, early childhood education programs through the federal government as well as our school districts. The multi-general workforce that you deal with, influence of special interests, changing levels of public support, increasingly competitive landscape, and as it says on the screen, the list goes on and on and on. This is granted a very complex and difficult environment in which to govern and in which to lead in. We recognize that, and this is what we specialize in and what we deal with on a regular basis, both in your industry and other parallel and adjacent industries. So a question for you, and a question that we hope that we can help you answer, is how are you addressing the changing educational environment as a leadership group together, as people who are in governance today and into the future, as people who are in administration and management and in your specialty areas as well as together? We believe very firmly that you have to be addressing them together. We're asking, how are you addressing them? Rhetorical question for now. We'll kind of summarize our questions to you at the end, and you can ask us in return.
And I also am the proud parent of 2 successful adult children who are products of public schools and personally feel strong commitment to the success of public schools and the work that all of you, I know, are doing. In terms of board governance imperatives, we're looking at factors that contribute to the successful functioning of boards. And I'm sure these are familiar to many of you. Board dynamics, that's the culture of the board, the kind of dialogue, how conflicts are resolved, what protocols you might be using and have in place for that, rules of engagement, board roles and responsibility, and how clear those roles are and what the responsibilities are and how those are enacted within the board. The structure of the board in terms of the committees and operations of the board, how director orientation and education is conducted and brings people into the board successfully and keeps everybody up to date. We do a lot with board assessment in terms of board evaluation, helping boards to evaluate how things are going. We use a lot of online surveys to do that, as well as individual interviews and feedback to boards. And then we also do a lot of work with boards on strategic planning, and we have a process that helps at the outset of the strategic planning process, the board and administration management teams align together so that there's a common vision and goals set throughout the process. So the questions that we would suggest for looking at board responsibilities, and we'll get to some questions in a moment here, but certainly as you look at the functioning of the board, that's the first set of board governance imperatives. And then in addition to that, there are board responsibilities. And again, I think you're probably familiar with this, but selecting and retaining a competent superintendent, risk management oversight for the schools and the district, evaluating management on a regular basis. Typically that's an annual written evaluation, ensuring that there are performance objectives and alignment in terms of the accountability for those objectives, ensuring a sound compensation program which balances risk as well as incentive, promoting and acting in the best interests of the public, fiduciary duties of loyalty and care, and reviewing and providing guidance to the long-term strategic plan. Continuing responsibilities, reviewing key initiatives and capital projects and the budget, making sure that the board evaluates the performance of the school district against the strategic plan and compares that to peer groups when appropriate. Communication and confidentiality, how does communication occur within the board and what's confidential and what can be communicated publicly and at what time frames. the independence requirement for board members, code of ethics, and district policies. So those are some of the responsibilities and questions that we would suggest for the board to consider. Are the roles clear for the board and the administration of the Bloomington Public School District? And are the roles aligned with the goals and objectives of the organization? Is there a clear understanding of what those objectives are, and is there alignment between those goals and objectives?
In terms of goals, more pictures, less bullet points from here on out. We firmly believe in having a process, in respecting a process protocol, and moving through a process that works for the type of organization you are, the type of group you are, the diverse and dynamic mix of people you are as a board and the leadership team. This is our process put into pictures, and what we're focusing on right now, just to talking about the criticality of having goals, so that goals can be shared, communicative, and you can hold each other accountable to those goals. It's very important for a school district, as we've heard very much of tonight, and I know you hear in all of the different moving parts and evolving education reform in terms of standards, protocol, benchmarks, and we just heard from Amber about the report cards that she gives to her students to give back to her. We don't think that there can be very much high-level functioning, high-performing teams without strong goals, and we're very big believers in setting both long-range goals, short-term actionable goals that can be measured and can have some level of accountability and action plan built into them. So questions for the board as well as for administration is, what are the strategies that you need to invest in? And we're looking forward, again, future development, organizational development, and how do you set objectives for the Bloomington Public School District? And finally, with goals, we believe and we feel strongly and help many of our clients move to execution, which is really where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. There are lots of different ways to get to execution. We firmly believe that communication is key, so that information is accessible to the right people from credible sources when it's needed to accomplish key tasks and deliver key constituencies to key constituencies. Without communication, without effective communication, meaningful communication, not a lot of what we just discussed and what you're working on in terms of your strategic plan can get done. Alignment is also key, that qualified people are available, proportionate to meet the requirements of the work and expectations of key customers. That's organizational design, that's alignment of roles and responsibilities all the way down through the organization. And then development, which I think is a very key part of your strategic directions from your 2007 strategic plan. So just a few more questions, the final ones. How is the budget allocated to your objectives, and what does that mean for leadership, and maybe more specifically future leadership in and around Bloomington Public School District? So there's just a recap of how can Whipley help your school district set about answering these questions in a collaborative way with high levels of communication, trust, leadership, and community building. Our proposal gets into a lot of the specifics of how to answer those questions. So I'll maybe open the floor first to general questions about us and our organization, our approach, and then maybe more specific questions about our proposal, which we can, again, talk to.
All right, let's take it there. Director Bergstrom.
Yes, first of all, thank you for coming. I feel compelled to also issue an apology for what you obviously stepped into. This is not your fault. There are some issues that are currently pending, and I hope you don't take it personally.
No, not at all.
So I have a whole bunch of questions, but I'll start with the first one. And I'll ask you both, do you guys, and I mean that generically, do you have complete faith in the proposal that we got a copy of?
Define faith a little bit further, and we...
That's up to you. Do you have complete faith in this proposal?
I'd first say that we trust our processes through the levels of experience that we have working with both dynamic and different levels of functioning teams. So if we're talking about organizational development at a group level of the size of your board, your administration, and then beyond that, all the constituencies you represent, these processes tend to work very well, but they do require a base and foundation of first communication and then establishing and forming trust and moving through trust phases towards different kinds of results and better outcomes. So we trust our process very well. It's going to take effort from pretty much all stakeholders involved in this process to make it work well.
And I would say that first, certainly we wouldn't take conflict personally, and we are often involved in conflicting board discussions, and certainly trust our process to help move forward with what those conflicts are and getting clarity with the system. And so we absolutely have faith in our process and our proposal. Are we guaranteeing certain outcomes? That's a different question. So I think what we do guarantee is that there's a process that will help everybody understand the different parties and assess that it takes work on everybody's part to participate in that process and gain trust and move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Seth, your partner has said yes, she has faith that you didn't answer that question.
I'll put a yes on the record.
You both have faith in this?
Yes.
Okay. The next question in line is, do either of you see any issues at all with starting this process with a board election in 3 weeks? There's 4 seats up for re-election.
We understand.
We could have 4 brand-new people. Do you see any difficulty at all, anything that you might say, you know what, this might be better if we just waited so that we knew who was in here, what their personalities were, what their perspective was? You realize that if we start this, and I read your presentation, it's saying that just about half of it can be finished before our winter break. Now, the way the elections work, they're held on November 5th, but they're not sworn in until the second Monday.
Director Bergstrom, please, you're really making a whole debate out of this. Would you use our resource people without stating opinions, which you don't want to hear?
Excuse me,
please go
I'm
ahead.
speaking.
No, you're asking a question of our resource people. We'll have the opportunity to speak in a little while. Would you do that, please?
I haven't finished.
I will cut you off if you can't ask a question.
Do you have any issues with making this presentation and having it half over when new people come in? Do you see any problem with that at all? Any problem? That's the question I'm asking.
You know, board turnover is a fact of life in any board situation. Obviously there are some conflicting protocols that we just witnessed tonight. So there are already some historical things that have been happening here. And it would seem that working on getting those things resolved will help new members understand what the basis and process is for the board in terms of approving strategic goals and alignment. So the Bloomington School District is not going away or changing, and so yes, I think the work can be begun, and then you incorporate new members as they join the board.
No, I see only upside to working now and not waiting. I think you will always be in a state of transition at some level. It might not be at as many board members coming in as this particular election, but new transition will happen after that, and new transition will happen after that, and new transition will happen after that. There's no, I'm of the perspective of why wait.
Right, there really aren't any guarantees that all those 4 seats will turn over. They may, but to wait, you're perpetually waiting, and then you're delaying putting in place the kinds of structures and processes that help groups function at all levels.
I think I'll just point to a part of our proposal which we very strongly believe in, which is getting independent perspectives and views about the opportunities for growth, development, improvement of the board and leadership and the relationship between the two in interviews. And I think I'll make the analogy between going on any kind of improvement program, let's say a diet, is do you wait to step on the scale until after some big change happens in your life, or do you step on the scale at the beginning of the process, use that as a baseline and move forward and deal with changes as they come? I think that's how I see the process, an ongoing process of development and improvement.
Okay, I have a follow-up question to that. I noticed that you have a dollar amount attached to your proposal, and I'm just I'm just going to carve it in half because it says that half approximately could be done before the winter break. We have a new board. The new board says, sorry, we're going a different direction. Do you only get paid half? Do you get paid all of your money? And does that say that in your proposal?
We wouldn't expect payment for services not delivered.
But does it say that?
This isn't a contract, so no, it doesn't specifically say that.
Okay, and if there is a contract,
It would say.
the language would be in
It
there?
would yes, obviously, that would
specific.
be specific.
Okay, well, I have a bunch more questions, but I don't want to monopolize this, so I'll come back to it when I'm done with
Thank
that
you,
all.
Dick. Are there others with questions? Yes, Director Bartolotta?
I read this, and I hope I didn't miss it, but I did not see anywhere where you gave a reference of any other districts that you've worked with?
We're happy to give references, yeah, upon request.
Okay, well, I'm hereby requesting.
So because of the nature of our work, the typical, as we can witness here, some of the sensitivity, the specifics of board governance, and the confidentiality of our clients, we're not prepared to give you references in a public forum, but we
Well,
will.
If you could, I'd appreciate that.
Mhm.
The rest of my questions have to do with, why we're doing this now, why we told Teamworks that we'd work with them, and now we're not. And I don't know when that discussion can come up, but I feel that's a discussion this board needs to talk about.
Are there other questions at this point in the presentation? Yes, Director Ablin.
Well, the key words at this point of the presentation, I assume we are asking questions more of the company rather than the proposal. I have questions of the proposal when we get there, so I'll wait.
That's my understanding. Is that correct?
That's great.
Oh,
That works
all
for
right.
us.
Sure.
Director Corman?
Yeah, so considering the fact that we will have new board members in 3 weeks, would those new members be able to participate of the process from the beginning alongside with everybody else, considering that they'll be joining in January?
Well, we would put in place some process to bring them up to speed and interview them so that we would bring them along. I mean, the process has begun, so you can't put them back at the beginning because they weren't here. But we would bring them into the process and get their views as we have the other board members.
I would hope we could do that before they're formally installed as board members, and maybe treat them, in that case, as still active members of the community and board members-elect.
Other questions?
I
Director
just
Burke?
have a follow-up to Nellie's for David. What's the legal protocol for, as Seth said, board member-elect? Do they have any voting rights? Can they?
Well, no, they don't have any voting rights, but they could certainly participate in, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but they could participate in it. They can't vote, no.
Okay.
Much of our process doesn't require, doesn't require voting, so we're not asking them to step into that role.
Yes.
Questions?
Yes, Superintendent Fujitaki.
How did we find this firm? How did we come across this firm?
I think I want them to continue doing the presentation. I don't think we need to move into discussion and debate of the proposal at this time.
It's not a proposal, I'm just asking about the firm. How do we come across this firm?
I interviewed consultants beginning probably in February or March after I was elected as chair, and that was a main part of what I was proposing to do, was finally move us to a process that, my understanding of board discussion was pretty much consensus that we needed some kind of guided conversation about our direction on our roles and responsibilities. As we move towards the summer, my understanding from you was that you had a preferred person that you thought that would be a good idea to use, and I agreed with that, and we brought forward that proposal. So that's how I met, was because I was doing some interviewing, and probably, I think I told you, a half dozen different consultants that I had an opportunity to speak with in order to take a look at process and think through, bought some publications, took some self-inventories as part of just evaluating what I thought would be helpful. I was impressed with Wifley's presentation, and when we had the opportunity a few weeks ago, I contacted Seth and asked him to bring forward a proposal to meet with me. He met with me, with Vice Chair Hibbs, and we talked it through, and they came forward with a proposal.
So how'd you find out about this firm?
Met Seth in a meeting.
But I just still don't understand how we go from a Saturday that was planned with Teamworks to a week later, you're meeting with a whole nother company. What happened? I'd like that explained.
The correspondence that we had with Teamworks was that they were uncomfortable that we did not have an agreement with them, and there was not a contract that was brought forward by administration in order that there could be something that we had act on. I did not realize that we could not move forward without my taking some initiative, and so I did, and that's when I went with the consultant I felt most comfortable with and asked them to come forward with a proposal if it was going to have my name on it, because I needed to advance a proposal because it wasn't going to happen otherwise. Do you understand where we're at? It was not put on an agenda. It did
But
not
we had that
arrive on an
Saturday
agenda.
that we could have had to discuss.
It would have been great if we could have done
Because
that.
this proposal is, my understanding,
Right.
almost $8,000 more than the Teamworks proposal. Right?
Is that,
I'm just saying it's-
I feel that you're trying to move into a discussion here about the pros and cons of what we ought to be hearing from them about, which is, should this be a consultant we should use? Let's hear the information, and then we can have that
You bring this
conversation.
resolution, but you didn't even
Right.
bring us references, so we couldn't look into anything, you know. How can we vote on a resolution about
All
a
right.
company we don't know anything
And,
about?
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Chair.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
Perhaps Seth could just give a little background on the company. I think that would be most reassuring to folks, that you're not a fly-by-night operation, but you've been around a long, long time, and there's thousands of people in your organization.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I don't think that's the issue. I think these people, they presented their background already. I don't think that's the question. I have a question, and whether, I'm not clear about where the line is between reviewing them as an organization or their proposal. I have a few questions. You asked for options. I didn't know you had interviewed that many people, but you asked for 2 options. I presented 2 options. Did you interview those options that I presented to you? You requested options, I gave you options, and
Mr. Chair, I think that this discussion's getting off topic.
Thank you.
I think it's germane to the topic. I'm asking the chair a question about a request that he gave me, and I responded, and I'd like to find out what happened to those options that I presented to him. I think that's a reasonable question, because
The superintendent has asked me to assure that in this meeting, that there is not visible dissension. You had said specifically that this was something that you felt, should we be discussing at this time, might be taken inappropriately by the community and would cause problems. I don't wish to go where you want me to go in terms of pointing fingers or assigning, who did what to whom. That's exactly what I thought you did not want to do. But I may ask you for some information about your role. I don't want to do that. I think what we need to do is discuss what is before us now, instead of going back in history and saying who did what, when, and why. I'd be glad to discuss that with you. You've had the proposal for a week. I had to initiate calls today because nobody contacted me about something that was presented as a resolution, which I expected we could openly discuss today, because that's how the board does business. So that's what I'm looking for at this time. We have people here who can tell you what they're about, and you have a chance to evaluate the quality of what they're putting forward without looking to assign and to historically drag out whatever. That's been a difficulty of this board, and I hope we can move past it tonight. Superintendent Fujitake.
my message to you was that I encouraged you that I was not in support of moving forward at this time, and I encourage you not to do it for a number of reasons, And that was the reason why I suggested, you brought it forward. I told you that I would be speaking about this at the table. And all I'm doing is asking questions so we can have this is an important decision with the consultant. We've used the same consultant for the past 8 years. They've produced the results that we've seen. Going through a transition now, we've set up all our systems, our accountability systems, all our reporting systems, all our objective measures around these measures. We're producing the kinds of results that you saw earlier that we reported on. I think, so I'm not sure what your criteria is, what you're trying to address. What are you trying to fix with this process? We have a consultant that we used for 8 years, and now you're recommending, without interviewing the options they gave you, and one of them was MSBA, which is a longtime consultant of the school district, and another one was Cheesebrough, both of which we've used. So it's very important, because any kind of change in consultants is going to mean a change in the workload of this district, and it's going to possibly slow us down on the work that we have a lot of momentum going on.
Yes, Director Bush.
I've, probably gone to too many years of school board training all these years, but it's been so important to me. What was a board decision as against an administrative decision? And that's why when I get calls from people with comments about schools or administrators or whatever, I always say that's not a board decision and refer them to the right person. So I've always been very careful about this. And in this case, it's certainly between the board and our final decision. But I feel like you have made this decision and inflicted the whole study and everything on us and just brought it forward. I feel like we haven't really hit part of it.
Yes, Director Hibbs.
I guess I'd like to hear a response from our guests as to the issue the superintendent raised about sort of undoing existing systems, undoing current scorecards, that kind of thing. Your thoughts on that?
I don't think there's a predisposition to undo anything. I think we don't come in with any kind of understanding of a positive, negative, or neutral situation within the district. I think our first and foremost objective within the proposal we presented is discovery and trying to work out where opportunities exist. For the time being, the opportunities seem to exist at the governance and governance communication role and responsibility clarity level, which is why we kind of presented the topics that we presented first. I don't think that necessitates by any stretch the undoing of hard labor and any of the results that were presented earlier in this Board of Education meeting. But as I think are indicated in prior comments, there does exist opportunity here. We can see it very clearly as professionals to improve the relationships, the communication, the role and responsibility clarity. It's pretty clear. I think we would start there and not go and cut too deep when only a scalpel might be necessary.
So your proposal wouldn't preclude working with existing systems that the district has, but perhaps looking for ways to improve those?
Right.
Absolutely.
But there is a
Yes.
there's a possibility you will recommend changes.
We usually recommend changes. We're
Yes.
consultants.
Right.
It's true. It's true. But those are we're management consultants. We live by a pretty strict code of parameters, guardrails, or strict ethical codes. One of those being we don't make management decisions, whether it's a governance decision or a management decision. So those are recommendations usually based on the interviews and process we go through. So it is, I realize and recognize and work with many boards who are in the public light. So we're very careful with those recommendations as well.
Sure, Director Bartolotta, you had your hand up next.
Well, I just We'd like to know from you, Mr. Chair, how you would like us to make a decision on this resolution tonight without even seeing any references at all.
I don't think I need to answer that at all. This is a time for asking questions of resource people, and then we will have a board discussion. I'll be glad to speak to my ideas at that time, but I really don't think that's what we're about at this time in this meeting. So, Director Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you once again for hanging in there. Do you foresee making any recommendations that will impact the teachers in the classroom?
That's a great question.
I have two sons that go to school at this middle school, and they love their teachers, they love the classroom, and I'm not interested in making any changes to what my sons love and the 10,159 students that are enrolled in this district this year. Do you foresee making any recommendations at any level that will have an impact on a classroom?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we facilitate bringing to light the discussions and issues that the administration and the board are considering. We're not bringing new recommendations to the table in the substance of the educational process that's occurring. So I think that it would be possible that some recommendation could reflect on a decision that would ultimately affect what happens in the schools, but those are management and board decisions, and we're not in a position to make recommendations about the educational proceeding.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd go one step further and say that as part of our process that we know and trust works. You asked about earlier if we have faith in our process. We would not fully recommend anything only with the input of the board and the administration. I think the board and the administration could always improve the amount of engagement, involvement, and feedback from people like teachers, but other stakeholders as well in your processes, and that's what, if you look through Section 3, I believe, Phase 3 of community engagement, teachers are obviously a key, if not the key stakeholder in this process of public education you're delivering, and I would want their voices heard in the process that you take in the future. That's the next year after the new board is installed, just as you do now with your current processes. So maybe is the answer to your question, I think, but not without the involvement, direct involvement from leaders, teacher leaders, and teachers themselves.
Okay, Director Hibbs.
Mr. Chair, it seems like there's some confusion here. We're not hiring these folks as consultants to do a study and generate recommendations to us. We're asking them to help us facilitate a process.
Right.
Any decisions that will be made by this board, by this community, by this administration. So to the extent that we're trying to instill fear in people about going forward with this process, the outcome of this process is entirely up to us. It's entirely up to any decisions. It'll be entirely up to the board that's sitting here in 2014.
Exactly.
Yes, and thank you. I do understand how that works.
Good.
I appreciate you explaining it to me. I realize I don't have your background in education, and it's makes me feel good that
Would you please not
you're
make it
illustrating
personal?
exactly why we need this.
I've been trying to lead a not personal discussion, and members around this table continually look for opportunities to question people's motives, past practice. Stop it, please. Stop it.
Sorry, I thought we were insinuating back and forth.
Stop it. Thank you. Are there other questions before we move forward with a discussion of specifically the proposal and our process? If not, let's get to it.
Sure. There's some detail here. It's presented in a way, hopefully, that you can run through it quickly, but with information. It starts with our experience and qualifications. There's an engagement team presented that represents both myself and Sophie Kelly, as well as other subject matter experts. This doesn't go into the extent of resources that we can call upon within Whippley that have deep experience within school districts, as well as our planning, board development, staff development, leadership development processes. We lead some of those practices ourselves, and we also have access to some of those resources as well. The partner in charge, if you're familiar with sort of accounting protocol, legal protocol, partner in charge of this process, should we be selected, is Steve Lipton. He's out of the Madison office. He's my direct supervisor and boss. He has deep experience in this area, as well as technology, leadership, and governance, which I know is a big topic for your district as well as others. On page 4 in the proposal, it goes on to our proposed approach. It's talking about our focus and our belief in involvement and engagement of key district stakeholders and leaders, and that is inclusive of district stakeholders and leaders. If you'll notice in the approach detail, the input is a balanced interview slate proposed again of each board member, numbering 7, and then up to 7 senior district administrators, which would be hopefully the superintendent. We would call for that, as well as select members of the administration. So we start off with our proposal focusing on Board of Education development and a facilitation plan for a process that gets us closer to establishing common and shared goals underneath your vision, mission statement, values, and directions that already exist. There's a lot of detail on this page, so I want to pause here and ask if you have any questions about that first step in the process. You can see on the right side of the page are some outcomes. The outcomes, again, to a lot of the points made earlier, don't deal necessarily with tangible outcomes. That's up to you, as was proposed, but instead deals with a facilitated work session, and I'll quote, in which the board and administration learn about collaborative, community-based planning options that exist today and that work well. I ended the quote there at planning options. B, the board and administration jointly develop a go-forward process, and C, consensus action items and timelines are developed.
Could I just interject something?
Yes, Director Hibbs.
So, the concern has been expressed here that shouldn't we be waiting until we have the new board? And, my fear with that is that it takes a board member a while to really know what's going on. And I think we've got a lot of experience around the table today that we should capitalize on, regardless of who's sitting here in 2014. But perhaps more importantly than that, we have cabinet members who have a lot of experience and insight, and some of those folks are not going to be here in 2014. Mr. Pappas, for example, who holds a wealth of information about the human resources function of this district. And so I just wanted to point that out to board members, that that's why it's important to do this now, is to capture the experience and the wisdom of all those people and then carry that forward. And I think the new board members, whoever they might be, will greatly benefit from having that kind of insight and information provided to them.
And I would see it as helping to build a foundation that future board members can then build on.
Okay, Superintendent Fujitaki.
When it comes to important decisions like this, I always go back to the district core values, and 2 of our core values are respect and teamwork. And to build teamwork, ownership and trust is critical. I submit that it will be much better to have people who are going to, we're going to have a new board. There's going to be at least 1 new board member. That person, to be respectful, I suggest that we wait for that board member to take ownership of this important decision, and then let the person take on and move forward together. We talk about team building. That's so critical, of ownership and trusting one another. We're at a critical point in time right now on how we move forward. We're getting good results. I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish, what the sense of urgency to do this when we will have a new board member. And I'd like to be respectful for that person. There'll be at least 1 new board member.
1 or 4?
At least 1 new board member. And give that person an opportunity to weigh in on this important decision. That person's going to be on board for 4 years. And I'm not sure what the sense of urgency is, especially with the results we're producing.
Mr. Chair? Director Hibbs? Mr. Superintendent, with all due respect, that would seem to be very disrespectful to my opinion. And I am currently on the Bloomington School Board.
Right.
I think my opinion about how the district goes forward is certainly as valid as that new board member's opinion, at least until January 2014.
Until 2014, but we're looking at a 5-month contract. And it goes beyond 2014.
And as was observed, every 2 years you may have new board members. So these statements just seem like we're stalling. We keep putting this off and off and off, and all I can figure out is that someone doesn't want to be held accountable. That's the only reason I can imagine why we're not doing this, is we don't want any accountability at the top of this organization. This board isn't accountable. We have no measures of accountability.
Director Hips, we're now moving into debate again before we've allowed finishing of a presentation here. Director Bartolotta?
Well, I was just going to move into that same place, so go ahead.
Thank
Move
you.
on.
Thanks. So in essence, we have a build approach, a process again, where we start with board education development, beginning with the board really, and input, deep input and important input from administration and staff. Phase 2, again, to your point earlier, where we say we can deliver before new board members are installed or before the second semester of school, is really about board and superintendent joint goal setting. So some of the inputs that we would expect are a planning process we've agreed to and we can all sign off on essentially and have buy-in to. The board's planning wish list for some of the focus areas, the objectives, the measurable objectives, long-term, short-term action plans that you as a board believe should be on the table, the superintendent's wish list with your cabinet of strategic areas of focus that you believe should be on the table so that we have essentially a pot to choose from of areas where you believe you should invest, where you should go, to answer some of those questions about how you set objectives, what your roles and responsibilities should be. There's some details in here about how we would get to that. We're flexible on some of the approach to your dynamics and your needs. The outcome that we would expect are some long-range strategic goals for the district that would, again, fall under your values, your vision, and mission, and then some mid- and short-term goal input from the people who are involved to eventually go out and have the community involved in shaping, helping give response to, and giving their input to. And then a communication plan and process input for community feedback, which is our ideal objective with this, again. I'll pause again.
All right, Director Bergstrom.
Yes, just a quick question. Have you had any conversation with, I guess it would be Tim, about the board's availability in the upcoming months? I mean, we are working into holiday time, travel time. Did you know before you came here what anyone's availability is?
We were asked to provide essentially a time commitment or a time estimate for each individual that was involved. We would limit that time investment to a 1 to 2 hour interview each for the front part of the process, a couple of hour meeting to get together. It could be part of an adjacent to a school board meeting or a separate meeting in order to have that, what is the process going to look like for us going forward, as well as do board development. And then this process is to be determined that I just described here. In terms of the elapsed weeks, we could fit that in at your joint scheduling availability.
So I'm just paraphrasing what I'm hearing. You don't really know what our availability is? You're just going to try and make it work?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, give it to me again.
So my answer is that we estimate about a 3-hour commitment, 3 to 4 hour commitment per board member upfront for the first phase of the process. And given that we're designing the process together, we would have to understand from each of your board members as well as the superintendent staff what the availability is in scheduling.
And you're still confident you can fit that in before the holidays?
I'm confident that if it's a priority of the school district that we can make it work.
Allow me to help answer that. The board, the bottom line is, meets at the call of the chair. We will find time for board meetings. I have no doubt of that. And we can find time before and after board meetings, as Seth hinted there as well, in order to take care of board business. So we'll move ahead on it, I'm sure, with official meetings if need be. But it sounds like the interviews can be individually scheduled, and you can move quite far along in a process without that needing to be an issue if we all gather together at the same time. Yes, Director Bergstrom.
Well, since you answered my question to the presenters, I have a follow-up. There were 36 Monday meetings after the January 14th meeting. And every single one of those was preceded by a Saturday that could have been used at the discretion of the board chair. Why didn't you use any of those 36 Mondays?
Excuse me, you're
or
reverting
Saturday?
again to a personal attack, and I just don't
This
think
is-
it's worth
this is
my even
not a-
speaking to that.
It's not a
That's-
personal attack, it's a
We
question.
will deal with board dynamics as part of what it is we are looking to contract with a consultant. So I don't want to pursue that dynamic any further because that's not even appropriate to where we are in the discussion. So I don't need to
You just
answer
said
that.
it's at the chair's discretion. You'll make time. We can find this on the videotape. The chair will make time. It means something.
we will
Why
have-
didn't you make time 36 weeks in a row?
Why are you criticizing Arlene's unavailability during the summer? Do you really want to go there, Dick? Just stop it.
You're the
Please
chair.
stop.
You're the chair.
Please stop.
You just said the chair will make
Okay,
time.
stopping at this point to discuss the detail, you're completely off topic again. Would you proceed a little bit further? Because I believe they answered the question to their best ability, and you did not find it satisfying. I answered
answered their
that we have
question.
the discretion as a board to do what we need to do. If you choose not to, well, don't. Let's just not do it. Thank you.
So I'm moving on to page 6 of the proposal. Phase 3 of our proposed approach would be community engagement and coalition building. Pursuant to the district's shared strategic planning process, jointly planned goals that, again, align to vision, mission, and the context of where the district is, given that now we're in a phase where new board members are installed and you are moving forward with a solid team, let's put it in your words. We would propose that you move forward with gaining community support for the district's goals. And that could be a mix of many different methods, and essentially what your intended strategic plan and process has room for. But I would certainly see and really recommend strongly that you ensure that those community members like teachers are well represented and their needs and aspirations being communicated. We have many tools at our disposal for making that happen. And what we haven't seen in many districts, and I'm not picking on Bloomington Public Schools, is that the strategic planning process and any process like this gets short-circuited at this point and before moving to execution and buy-in. And again, I don't know enough about your processes in the past to suggest that, but I will find out, again, assuming that we win a contract with you. So the outcome of this phase would be, again, support for the district's goals, mid and short-term goal input from the community, input to internal and external coalitions that might help you initiate and execute future objectives. Pause again.
No, please keep going.
I'll keep going. And finally, building the district scorecard. I think, again, it's critical. You live in a culture, we all live in a culture at this point of measurement, accountability, setting baseline measures, setting high standards, and living up to those standards in any way possible. Again, as a team, as a community, focused on our mission of serving kids and delivering education. So this process is the least defined of our proposal. However, it's probably the most important, and the end result, which would result in the outcome of community support for the district's goals, number one, but shared measurable actions and outcomes and administration assignments, as well as any new task force assignments that are necessary. That could be members of the board itself, that could be past members of the board, past members of the administration, and I could go on down the list of stakeholders that I would hope are part of your future success. So moving on to timing and investment. The total estimated investment for the proposed approach as presented is $24,000. It's broken up by step. Step 1 and 2, Board of Education Development and Facilitation Plan, $7,500. Board Superintendent Goal Setting, $4,500. Community Engagement and Coalition Building, $7,500. Building the District Scorecard, $4,500. There's some firm history, which we provided at a high level, and there's a conclusion, which is essentially what I'll say here, which is thank you again for the opportunity to propose on working with the school district. It would really be our honor and privilege, to your point earlier about getting into and involved in this, and no need to apologize. We're here by choice, and it's the work that we like to do because of our commitment to your mission.
All All right, then, thank you. Questions about the proposal? Yes.
I have a
Dr.
financial
Abram, please.
question. Those 4 component parts, are they standalone? Could we go with 3 of the 4? Could we go with 2 of the 4? Do we have to take all 4 of the 4?
Well,
That's an excellent question.
you can certainly stop at any point, but they build on each other. So we would need to start with one and progress.
Agree there. Okay. We could stop, could we go 1, 2, 4?
I think that would be a challenge in terms of getting all the stakeholders involved, but certainly you can elect to alter the process. We don't recommend necessarily cutting out that community building.
If you were to recommend, would you recommend stopping at 2 then, if we are
But we don't
budgetarily
recommend
concerned?
stopping.
We would recommend
we-
potentially stopping
right.
without us, if you're doing well, if that makes sense.
Say that again?
I think what Sophie was trying to say is we wouldn't recommend stopping the process or a process like this. It's at your discretion whether and how much support and help you need from consultants, facilitators, and any other outside vendor.
What if we told you that we only had 15,000 to spend? What would you recommend?
Well, that's a different question than whether you can stop the process or break it down. It depends on what your goals are. If you want to get to a scorecard or building objectives and alignment, then we'd have to figure out a way to reduce the process somehow. I guess we'd have to go back to the drawing board and see what we could propose that would give you that outcome. And it might be that we'd have to negotiate what the outcomes are.
Yes, Director Hibbs?
Just an observation. The board historically has struggled with goal setting, and to the extent that the board has set goals for someone or something, I think we've also struggled with how do we measure success. So I'm just saying I can see all of these aspects being kind of interlinked and equally critical.
Yes, Superintendent Fujitaki.
A question that hasn't been answered is on references. If we're going to be taking, should we get references?
I think it would be fiscally irresponsible of us not to.
I concur.
Director Hibbs?
Mr. Chair, I think we can approve this resolution. We certainly haven't entered into a contract, so, if we found the references or lack thereof to be troubling, then we're done.
Again, it's similar to the annual report question. Are we going to vote on something before we see it, or vote on something after? You know what I'm saying?
Do you really think that that's an issue? Is that really the issue?
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. They're a CPA firm, Mark. I don't know if
And
they
they
work
have
with...
management consultants, and they work with nonprofits.
That's what they told us,
Okay,
but I'd like to see it.
Let's not have this kind of byplay, please, between members.
We often see proposals approved pending references, and the references would, in our opinion, give you what you need or expect, but we're very proud of our work and our references, and would expect that what you see here in terms of our background, the proposal that we put together, the processes that we use very often with many different boards and clients that we work with. And so we have no hesitation about our references, and many of our clients have approved a proposal and then said, we'd like to check references, and that's typically a second step or not something that would prohibit you from evaluating a proposal. It's not.
Can you mentioned something way back when, that confidentiality, but could you tell us 1 or 2 school districts you've worked with prior to this?
we haven't received express permission to do that, and similar to if we were to work with you, we wouldn't go around saying your name in this context, or really any of the work we do. Again, we sort of live by the, we are management consultants, and there's a code of ethics as well as the CPA firm code of ethics. We live by both of those. So without that express approval prior to this meeting, we can't do that. But to Sophie's point, we will do that.
I'm looking at the website right now, if I can assist in answering that question, because it appears you do have featured success stories of a number of different organizations, businesses you've worked with. So if that is important to board members, they might want to, even at this time, page through that and look for those names so that you understand that there are credible people with good experience in working with this.
Since it's public, why don't you read us 3 of them?
Well, no offense to the website and to the representatives of the company, but the website is just some fancy Christmas packaging. You're not going to put stuff on there that makes you look bad. I certainly hope that the number of people that you have in your company would vet the information that's on the webpage.
Correct.
So we certainly have outside parties, as we've said. References can be provided, but we do need to ask permission before we give names and phone numbers. But that's not an issue to do. We do it all the time. I mean, we've been in business for 80 years. There's certainly plenty of data on our website that can be proven. It's not just Christmas dressing or, I'm sorry how you described it, but...
Fancy packaging.
Fancy packaging. We certainly are an established firm and have 22 offices around the country and internationally. So we don't mind providing references at all.
Okay, well, I did take the time to read your online presence, and I have to say, and again, I mean no disrespect,
Sure.
I was not overly impressed.
Well,
Yes, Superintendent Fujitaki. Excuse me, I'm writing down names right now of those organizations featured on the website in case that question comes up again. I will be able to answer it. I hadn't written them down. Go ahead.
One of our practices and protocols is to, when we do important things like this, is we give options. We look at various proposals, at least more than one. Are we going to be doing that? Because we did receive proposals from other firms, and one of which is a longtime consultant of, in fact, both are longtime consultants of ours.
you know, relative to that statement, Superintendent, I don't object to a new voice being heard once in a while.
A new voice and contrast, but shouldn't we also hear from the old voice and what they have to offer us and what their proposals are and what their benefits are over a new voice?
I agree that, but it didn't happen. So for some reason, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, it was in your ballpark, I think, to put it in front of us, and it didn't happen.
It wasn't, well, okay. I don't know where you got that information from, but that's not true.
It didn't happen, period.
Right.
Somebody's responsible, either the chair or the superintendent, but one of you two didn't make it happen.
Right, so shouldn't we, regardless of whether what happened, shouldn't we have a chance to look at current, some other options?
Tim, would you explain
Excuse
to
me,
us-
I'm not understanding the question. We didn't look at any other options before. Now you're saying we need to look at other options when the presentation that fell through wasn't one of a number of options. We didn't consider other consultants. We had one that was brought forward. This is consistent with past practice that I'm bringing forward one recommendation in this resolution.
How did you decide this yourself?
I met with Seth this summer and outlined what I thought were some opportunities for board development and goal setting, procedures, things that we have discussed, including at our evaluation meetings, in which we had the conversation about the difficulty of nailing down specifics of what we're looking for performance, and what timing there'd be, and so forth. So had that opportunity to talk with Seth. We kind of left it there. We had a good conversation. There was nothing formal came out of that. As I said, I was interviewing a number of people about their consultants' strategies, and was interested myself in learning more about the profession and the details. I approached Seth when we did not have a contract come forward for TeamWorks, and felt that that would be an opportunity to move forward quickly on something where I would take the initiative to make it happen, because it did not come forward previously. And I felt more comfortable in reality with what was being proposed from Wifley than what I saw was a proposal that was kind of a continuing on under the previous standards we had without getting that, as Lyle said, the fresh eye, the new set of eyes, taking a look at things. I thought that had a value too, and the changing educational environment might be something we really want to take a look at after 8 years. So it made good sense. I thought there was a good rapport and an excellent proposal that came forward. So I feel comfortable in bringing it forward for us to move forward on what the board has said is a priority, and I think this well meets the criteria that we set out.
And Tim, so you didn't interview others, or?
I spoke with other consultants as well, yes.
Excuse me.
I don't think I'm going to name any of them because we're not considering their proposals, but yes, I did meet with others as well, beginning in February, after I was elected chair.
Can I
Yes,
just
Director Bergstrom.
ask, are you guys done? I'd like to move to a more substantive conversation about how this happened.
Sure. Have you asked the questions that you want to ask of the resource people while
Yes,
they're at the table?
We don't want to need to let them hang out here and dry.
Okay.
Let's
Does
move
the
these
board
guys
agree?
along.
Are we finished with having our presentation on what this proposal is about from Wifley?
Yes, I'm okay with that, but
Okay.
Can we amend, alter the proposal down the road? Because we
Absolutely.
want to
Sure.
steer this way rather than that way?
Absolutely. We could work it in phases and only have an engagement letter for a phase that suits your needs. In closing, I guess, I'm not sure if you're closing or not, but I would just say that on behalf of Wifley, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to present to the school board and Superintendent Fujitaki and the cabinet and members of the public that are listening. And we would welcome the opportunity to work with you. And we often do enter into situations where there's been a consultant working in the past. And with all due respect, we're members of a collegial profession, and we often work to pick up where other consultants have already done some work, and we don't want to assess that earlier. We're not looking to make changes just for the sake of change. And so where things are working, we're only going to help build on that. And where we can, we'd like to help everyone work together and align around goals that you all agree to. And in the end, it's your plan, your process, and the outcomes are for you to implement and execute upon.
Seth?
Thanks.
Anything further? All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for your good questions.
I appreciate your being here to make the presentation and to go into some detail and providing that proposal in advance that we're able to share it with everyone on the board beginning of last week. So, appreciation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right, the floor is open. Yes, Director Bergstrom.
I'd like to ask you the same question I asked our presenters. Do you have complete faith in Wifley?
Dick,
Yes
you
or
asked
no?
a faith question at the candidates forum. And
Yes or no, do you have faith?
No, Dick, it's not a yes or no question.
Yes, it is. I'm asking you to answer
I'm
yes
not
or no.
required to answer it, so we can move on to the next thing.
Do you have faith in this?
Who else has a...
Why would we move forward if you don't have faith?
I don't need to respond directly to you. We're having board conversation, and everybody is involved. Maybe you want to ask everybody around the table one by one if they have faith, but I don't think that would be appropriate either. I think it's a matter of confidence.
I'll pass that conversation around.
No, faith is not at issue here. Confidence,
I'm
trust,
asking you a
respect.
question.
And I'm not answering. So can we move on to somebody else,
Are you
please? Stop
folks
trying to
listening at home?
personalize it. I encourage all board members not to personalize this conversation, as has been happening. We need a consultant.
You know,
All right.
the follow-up that Lyle mentioned is, in my estimation, lies at the head of this board, the chair. You messed up, and you're afraid to admit it. You made a giant blunder. You wasted 36 Mondays that were preceded by 36 Saturdays. You never called me. You never asked, when is your availability? Let's get together. We're going to have a board meeting, or we're just going to go have some coffee and talk. That's what conversation is. You messed up, and now you're trying to ram this down our throats, and I don't like it, period. That's what this is.
Dick, I could...
It's part and parcel
Excuse me.
of your own dysfunction. You wasted 36 weeks doing nothing. It's not my job to follow up on your initiative.
Dick, when I say no personal attacks, it doesn't mean everybody but the chairman. I don't know what advantage you see of getting out of behaving like this. I suppose you could continue every time I call on you, but it's not helping
I'm
the
just
board
speaking the
process
truth.
in any way. There are things I could tell you
Then
that
tell
I'm
me.
not going to tell you.
Tell me right now.
How frequently did I ask you when you were available to meet, and you told me that you didn't have time because you're so busy volunteering? You never followed up on
When?
any of my invitations. Dick, let's stop it. Quit trying to
Point to them. You never made one, you never wrote one email, not one.
Dick.
I have no voicemails, no emails, no contact at all. None.
It's
And that's just me. I don't know when you talk to anyone else.
This doesn't advance things to point fingers, so I'm not going to do it, Dick. You can keep trying, but you're just not going to bait me into getting to that level.
I'm not
with you,
trying to
so stop,
bait you.
please.
I'm trying to engage in conversation.
And can we have someone who'd like to actually speak about the resolution and how they feel about how we can move forward here? Then maybe there isn't. Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Director Bartoletto.
Well, I would like to see other proposals before we spend this amount of money to do this process. I agree that the process needs to be done. I just agree that we should have not waited until October, and now we're going to, if we move forward with this in the next 8 weeks, which is the holidays, which is going to be the hardest time to get people together, we're going to try to fit this in. I don't think this is the right time, and I'd like to see other applications.
I agree.
Well, can you or the superintendent or somebody have a proposal ready for us at the next meeting?
Yes.
When is the next meeting? 2 weeks?
28th.
Who would you bring forth?
I'd bring forward the ones I suggested, MSBA and Dennis Cheesebrough.
You'd bring two?
Steamworks.
I would suggest that bringing about competing proposals is not where we want to be. Now, that's an endless process. I don't think we want to go, well, maybe we can find even a better one. Or now it's even later and we have even less of an opportunity to do what this board stated it wanted to do some time ago. So I encourage support for a proposal that we can move forward. It seems that this is, again, a matter of looking to act on what we say are our intentions and our ideals, and then we bog down with past performances and things that we have trouble getting beyond. That would be the board dynamics that ought to be addressed. That would be what I feel comfortable this proposal gets at in getting us off the dime and getting moving in a positive direction.
Have you contacted Teamworks? Just tell them that we're not using them, since my understanding is they're under the understanding that we are using them. So, I mean, just by the Saturday meeting.
The superintendent is choosing not to help me out here and chose not to help me out when our first meeting fell through.
The email that I saw was addressed to you, though, Tim.
It was.
Okay.
It was. I'm at a loss as to why I became an intermediary in a process that I didn't realize I controlled in bringing forward that proposal and implementing it. That is, again, you're looking at the past, and I don't want to label anybody. You were contacted, all of you on the board, for available dates. Some people made themselves extremely scarce in order to meet. We had health concerns, we had summer vacation plans. This is the kind of conversation that gets us nowhere. When we're always looking for what's the root of a problem that we can point at somebody for making a mistake, we're not moving forward. This is why we need to move into this kind of a system that is asking us to evaluate our true goals and processes in order to get there. I do not choose to point fingers.
You just did.
This time. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I had
Director
my
Wood.
hand up and I wasn't chosen.
I feel personally, I mean, I'm not against that, but I feel too like you made this decision and that we were not part of it.
Yes, Superintendent Fujitaki, you had your hand up. You wanted to comment?
Moving forward, I like to partner with you to go out and look for a consultant, come up with proposals for this group for the 28th. So we can look at more than one proposal. And this is just going forward. I'm not going to revisit what happened before, who did what, just going forward here. It should be this collaborative thing where we go forward and we vet these proposals together.
Director Bergstrom?
Yes, our neighborhood, which is 3 blocks to the north here, on August 6th, had a rather strong, severe hailstorm. Lots and lots of damage. When we had the insurance company come out, our own insurance company suggested that we get more than one quote. They said it was prudent. The insurance company did. Every one of the neighbors that I spoke to got 3 or more quotes. And you're suggesting, nope, this is going to do it. You're not interested in something that we can compare them to. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Okay, Director Hibbs?
I
Did you
didn't
have your
ask
hand up?
Mark, I asked Tim.
I'm not responding directly to questions. You attempt to continually personalize everything by attacking individuals or questioning their motives.
And this is
And I
not
just
an
don't want to
attack.
go there, Dick. I'm sorry, you're out of order, and I'm not going to answer you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director Hibbs.
I recall a meeting with the superintendent where it was after the Saturday session didn't happen, and you asked the superintendent if he would find other firms that might be interested in this. And so I guess the result of that search is Cheesebrow again and MSBA. And I have to say, from previous workshops that we've done with MSBA, I don't think they're going to be able to help us. I think our issues go well beyond their capabilities. And frankly, I think I don't think that the Teamworks initial proposal was particularly responsive to our needs, and so all of this interest in getting multiple bids just seems like a delaying tactic, and I'm certain that if there's success in delaying this, that it just won't happen. And I think it's, as tonight has demonstrated, it's clearly something that needs to happen, because I don't think I've ever been as embarrassed as I am tonight to be on the Bloomington School Board. The behavior of this board has just been terrible. And that's why I went outside. I went outside to apologize to them.
I think we should be apologized to for having a resolution brought to us that we had nothing to do with. It says it's from the school board. It is definitely not from the school board. Originating department is school board, and it's not us.
I didn't
One
choose the
person.
wording.
Well, I
The
just don't think
administration
it's
chose
fair.
the wording.
I don't think it's fair. Well, you brought this company to us, so Can't blame that on them.
I'm not blaming it, I'm
I-
proud of it.
I think we should
I don't think
commend
there's any
the
blame to
chair,
be had.
actually, for taking the initiative to try to move this along, because we've been talking about this for years. And he finally just said, look, if we can't get it by working through the administration, then we as a board need to take ownership for it. And I'm going to get a proposal, and I'm going to bring it to the board, and then it's up to the board to make a decision, up or down.
And we had that opportunity on that Saturday, and we let it fly away. We were all available. Every one of us were available. We all said, we're available, we're open. And we said, nope, we're not meeting.
But we didn't have a contract. That was a technicality in that.
But we could have just met, Lyle, and had coffee and got to know each other a little better and did a little team building, if that was all we could do. Right? That's something we haven't done.
Yeah, as Mr. Chair, as a
Yes.
brand-new member, as a rookie on the table here, I think it's obvious. We need someone to lead us forward and so forth, and I guess the one shortcoming I see of this proposal is I'd like to have them work more on the camaraderie of the board and the administration, okay? I'm not that interested right now in going for strategic, 7-year strategic plans. When I heard this was coming forward, or the previous one, I said, yes, that's what we need for the board, the administration, the cabinet, to talk to each other in polite ways and to share information. I don't think we share enough, but I want some action. I am overdue for action, but I also want to support the superintendent. I don't think we would get any meeting time movement before November 5th. Anyway, and I'm open to hearing another proposal, but I want that to be a professional proposal, and I'm not sure, I think I agree with you, Mark, on MSBA.
Thank you, Lyle.
So I want to hear some more people, but I'm just waiting to hear what's going on. But I want action. I want this to move forward with somebody. I really don't care who's going to lead us, but someone has to lead us, and whichever is best for the district financially or reputation-wise or reference-wise, I'm open to it.
Question.
Yes, Director Bush.
Since you were the one that picked him up and picked him out and interviewed him and so forth, have they had a lot of experience with school districts? It sounds like they've been more business.
They've had some experience with school districts, yes.
I think the young lady was their spearheaded person for nonprofits.
They both work with nonprofits, Lab? That's their division that they're, yeah, they both do. They're both committed to nonprofit sector specifically, and some with school boards. Mhm. Yes, Director Fujitaki, or Superintendent Fujitaki.
Board Member Eblin, I really appreciate you reaching out to support me and what I like to do. And I would appreciate if we could have a chance to present another proposal to the board. So thank you.
You have my proposal. I'm tempted to speak, but I brought forth a motion, and we have people who've done a better job explaining it than I. Director Corman.
Okay, well, we definitely need a facilitator. We all agree on that, right? I think everybody would agree on that, too. But we did talk about this. We have been talking about this for months now. You know, right after January, February, we did talk about this and about the need of having that facilitator, and the name of TeamWorks came up to several times. However, I never saw anything happening after that. I mean, there was no proposal that would come after that, and it took several months. It's been several months now. Now we are almost at the end of the year. In my opinion, you know, last time when we finally decided, okay, this is the time, we finally agree on dates, and this is the time we're going to meet, I was really looking forward to be there for that workshop because I am a person that likes to interact with other people. I like to listen. I like to exchange opinions and get to learn from everybody's perspective. So I was really looking forward to that. It didn't happen, so I was really disappointed. Now, who is it to blame for that? It doesn't really matter. The fact is that it just didn't happen that day. And even so, after that, we didn't get any specific proposals. So I think I think it's great that the chair actually took action and went and looked for something else, because I think he was put in a tough spot as well during the last meeting when the workshop had to be canceled. Now, the proposal itself, I think it looks pretty interesting. I mean, I really like the way that it, all the stages that it has and how it gives opportunity for everybody to somehow exchange information that we cannot do when everybody is present. So I really like the proposal. I don't see why we couldn't go for that one. We haven't heard the other ones really in detail, which is something I would have liked to see before. Now, I would also agree that I wouldn't want to see this, if we opt for waiting to hear for the other two proposals as it goes for weeks again, that we keep delaying this, or not purposely, but that it happens that then goes 1 week, 2 weeks, and then we don't get anywhere. So what would be, a time or a date when we would say, if that's the case, that we would say, okay, here are the proposals, and now we're going to vote on something.
But I think the superintendent has guaranteed, I'm going to use that word, guaranteed, that we'll have a proposal in front of us in 2 weeks. And then at that time, we'll have two proposals. And at that time, we can then vote for proposal A or B, and up or down, and we'll have our first meeting within a month.
Okay.
That's the timeline I'm looking at.
Director Hibbs?
If we don't get a proposal for 2 weeks, though, then I think we'll be in the same position of, we won't make a decision until the middle of November. And then, of course, we will be into the holidays. And so, from a practical standpoint, this won't happen until January or thereafter.
Why wouldn't we vote it up or down in 2 weeks?
Well, because if we're allowing 2 weeks, it's entirely possible we won't see a proposal until 2 weeks. And, why wouldn't we be in the same place where people are apprehensive about making a spur-of-the-moment decision? So I could anticipate people saying, well, I just got this, I'd like some time to mull it over.
No, but
Can we defer a decision until the November meeting?
well, we can.
So my proposal is, if you're dead set on needing another proposal, then we need to see it in a week.
No. No,
We can do that.
I'm hearing, let's not discuss the merits of this proposal. Let's not discuss the merits of these consultants. Let's go out there and see if there might be something better out there. That's not why I brought forward this motion, so that it would initiate the discussion of whether and how we should move forward. We're hearing some members say, let's just not do this now. We're hearing some members say, oh, but how do we know these people really have some kind of reference credentials, never mind what they've showed you already? We've had board members who want to see some other kind of proposal. When now we've got a boilerplate, now that can be shared with anybody else, and then they can adopt that language. We already saw some language in a process which I was not enamored of, and which Director Hibbs indicates he didn't think necessarily addressed our real needs. I don't know that we are obligated to provide cliff notes to someone else in order to adapt their proposal and say, well, I could do the same thing, only I could do it better. I believe it's a strong proposal. I think it's a credible organization, and I think it's past time that we did something. And so I'm going to look to move this forward and have us take a vote tonight, and I think anything else in terms of delaying to see some other options provides a precedence to delay to see some other options and delay, and I don't think that's the place we want to go. I think we need to move forward with a credible, what I think is an excellent organization, and use their assistance. Superintendent Fujitaki.
Can have the proposal in less than a week.
And we could allow this forum to come back with a revised proposal, couldn't we? If you're worried about being,
Who will we get the
right.
proposal from?
Cheesebro, Teamworks International.
That was the group that did not come forward with a workable process and a contract last time. I'm disappointed. We talk about a trust issue. I think you need to trust your consultants. So that would, I think we need to, when I asked for alternatives, you said you could find an alternative, Superintendent Fujitaki, and what you came back with was Teamworks again. And I already said I was not satisfied with Teamworks. I don't know why we need to continually have this kind of a conflict when the expectations were made clear at the time. Alternatives did not mean rebidding the same organization, to my mind. Yes?
Use the term options, and I gave you options. And I have it in an email from you.
We had already moved ahead.
I don't want to go back.
I know,
And-
we already
but
moved ahead. You're right.
I'm moving
You're going
ahead,
back.
and
We'd moved
I'm
ahead.
suggesting that we can do this.
Right. Right. Okay.
I think this came to us without us having a lot of knowledge about it.
I see,
Director Bartolone, go ahead.
I see next week, there's a holiday on the 21st, correct?
next week?
The 21st, October
What's
21st?
the 21st?
So it's it says holiday.
Today's the holiday.
I'm just telling you what I'm seeing here. So could we possibly have a workshop next Monday? We have nothing scheduled? Or Tuesday?
For the purpose of
For
what?
the purpose of reviewing another proposal and discussing so that we're ready on the 28th to vote.
Well, I can already tell you I'm not interested in another proposal from Teamworks, so
Okay.
if that's,
Well, you
that's
don't
the-
have to come
that's
then.
the only option.
Well, I'm trying to think of parliamentarily what to do here. I think I'm going to make a motion to table this to a date certain, which is October 28th. Is that the right? Then, once we hopefully table it, then I'm going to make a motion to instruct the superintendent to come forth with a proposal from, is it called Teamworks, and have it in our hands in 7 days. And then we'll go from there. But I first have to make the motion to table, and I will so do right now, to table to a date certain, October 28th.
Second.
I have a question about that. So what happens if, well, you say it is going to happen, we're going to have it,
Mhm.
right? But what
Yes.
happens if in that day, when we come back, there's no any other proposal?
Then
But
come-
the one that we have today? Just
Then
go
I
ahead
can
and
bring
vote
this
and-
off the table, and away we go.
Right.
Right?
This is off the table automatically if you move to October 28th.
Right, but if we don't get a second proposal by the 28th, all I have to do is bring it off the table and vote it up or down.
It will be off the table, yes.
Oh, it
You can
is,
vote it up or
automatic.
down, yes.
I vote
All
in
right,
favor of
was-
that.
Okay, there was a motion?
Needs a second. Did-
Yeah.
Marine second.
Okay, motion second.
It's debatable.
Well, I'll just say that by then we'll have the references from this company, and we'll be able to make a sound judgment, I think.
Yeah, and I'm doing it for the simple fact that I've only had one proposal, and I think Dick and Maureen have made a good argument there. We've only had one, but I'm also doing it to support the superintendent, because he seems quite adamant that he would like to have another proposal. I don't know if he's speaking adamantly against this one, but he's speaking in favor of another one. So I'm doing that as a support of the superintendent.
Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
No.
Okay, carries. We now move to the next item on our agenda, number 5, board meeting agendas. Director Dick Bergstrom has something he wanted to bring forward. We put it on the agenda for tonight.
Yes, I think
Director Bergstrom.
thank you. I think tonight's discussion illustrated quite eloquently why I would like to bring my request to the board. I'm requesting that if anyone wants to move an item from the A agenda to the B agenda, that the board and the district be given at least 48 hours notification. So just the good old-fashioned friendly heads up. I don't-
have to change your policy for that to happen.
Anyone want to speak to that, or Director Hibbs?
Well, Director Bergstrom, I think it's ironic that that's your request, since you tried to remove a Part B issue, which is more controversial than Part A items. And frankly, I guess that I will have to quit my job if that's going to be our policy, because a 48-hour window takes you back to Saturday, which practically takes you back to Friday, since board packets don't come out until Thursday afternoon. You know, I have a job, I have other obligations. I oftentimes don't get to board packets until the weekend or even sometimes Monday morning, so it would be very difficult for me to comply with such a policy. And especially because Part A items are consent items and are anticipated to be non-controversial. I really don't see what the concern or issue is there. And I frankly think in the 12 years that I've been on the school board, it's probably been a handful of times that somebody's moved something from Part A to Part B. And I know in my case, when I've done it, it's simply been because I had a question that I thought the answer to was important for the public to hear.
I'm not against conversation. I appreciate your comments. I've been on the board 19 months, and it's happened twice. So maybe I'm just the odd guy. I'm used to being called odd, so that would fit. Really what I'm asking is just for some heads up. Now, if we don't have time to do it, you know, that's a personal issue. If you don't have time to do this job, maybe you shouldn't have this job.
Stop it, please. That's out of order. Unless you have something constructive to say, Dick, you're done talking. If anybody else would like to contribute something else to the conversation, we can do that. Director Quinn.
I do. Okay. In my opinion, I do not have, I would not have the time, if we pass something like that, I would not have the time to reflect on what I have read. I wouldn't be able to go, you know, over a second time. Sometimes it takes me a while, because I'm, you know, I'm busy like everybody else is, I understand that. But sometimes I need to go a second time, and sometimes there's like an item that I don't get to until Monday morning. And so I could not support that. And I also assume that if it is in the agenda, the administration is ready for answers, to take questions. So, and if that's the case, then there will be no parents that could actually run for the school board, you know, because parents are always busy. And
Or working
many
adults.
people- yeah, working adults. So actually nobody will be able to, if we're going to say that, you know, you cannot do this job, you don't have the time because you're working.
I think that is just another way of trying to silence the voice of the people.
Director Barlotta.
I just want to say, maybe not 48 hours is not good, but I agree with it's just a camaraderie thing again, to say, you know, heads up, I have a question about this, is that I don't think that's a lot to ask, you know, to just give people a heads up, so that I could say, oh, well, I'd like to look into that, maybe read it again, just to say, oh, I understand why he's going to ask that question, and I don't know, I just don't think it's a horrible thing to say, and maybe not 48 hours, but maybe Monday morning, you just send an email and say, I'm going to ask to move this to Part A, and just an FYI, it doesn't have to be a conversation starter. That's just my opinion.
Director Hibbs.
I guess what worries me is that These are all moves that are designed to control people's, they're very controlling, and you know, I think...
Be careful.
I think I should be able to come to a board meeting and introduce a resolution. Now, you're right. Out of courtesy, it would be nice if I've given that to all of you in advance so that you can think about it and think about how you want to vote on that. But I don't think we should preclude the opportunity that something needs to be done right away, and I can come and I can make a motion, and then you either vote it up or down. But if we start kind of writing all these things into policy, then I think it's sort of pointless for us to even be here, because we'll regulate everything to death.
I don't need to see it in a policy change. I just think, you know, just common courtesy to our fellow board members would be nice.
Maybe that would be one of the things about board dynamics we could address in our workshop on board development, organizational improvement. Sure. Well, there's no motion for discussion right now, so thank you for bringing the issue up. I'm glad to put it on the agenda for some feedback. We can move on to the next portion of our agenda, board member reports. Would anyone care to report on their responsibilities as a assigned member of the board? Yes, Director Bartolotta, please.
I attended the TIES annual meeting. They had 3 presentations from other school districts regarding some innovative ways that they're working with TIES, most of which we already do, so that's nice to see. District Curriculum Committee had their first meeting. We had a presentation from Dr. Heisted, and again, if it's the preview of what we're going to see on the 28th, which I believe it was, the results are astonishing to me, the math and reading scores. Other than that, I had the opportunity to do the guest reader, community reader for Olson Elementary's readathon this month, and I thank them for that opportunity. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Director Bergstrom.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say thanks to Maureen for sitting in at the TIES meeting. I had a prior engagement. I also was able to go to Mrs. H's 3rd grade class over at Olson Elementary and read to the students over there. I read the book, What If Everyone Did That? Had a chance to go over to Normandale Hills PTSA meeting and talk to that family-friendly school. I went to Kennedy and Jefferson's homecoming games, had a lot of fun there. Made a special, yes, it was cold, a special connection with one of the special ed students at Olson Elementary. Got a wonderful hug from that young man, and it certainly made my day.
Director Hibbs.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Attended the labor management meeting last week. Yeah, whatever. And, you know, things are chugging along fine. Nothing in particular to report to the board. And then I actually went over to Valley View Middle School and spoke to the 2 Avid classes there about my career. And I just want to say that I was super impressed by everything I saw at Valley View Middle School, from the people in the front office and the way they greet people when people come into the building, to the teachers and the kids, and just the rapport that they have. And it was an absolute blast talking to the kids about an engineering career and showing some pictures of projects that I am involved in with at work. So it was really fun, and my hat off to Valley View Middle School for all the great things they're doing and the great people they've got in the building, adults and kids.
Any other board member reports?
I've gone to a lot of school events at the schools, and so great to see the students and our wonderful staff. And I'm always saying I'm thankful to be on the Bloomington board because we have such a great district and community.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else prepared to do a report this time, Superintendent's report.
Yeah, on the high note, 8 Bloomington High School students have been named semifinalists in the 59th Annual National Merit Scholarship Program. The students were invited to an upcoming school board meeting for recognition. So congratulations to those students.
Yes.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Do we have a workshop and a meeting officially on our agenda? Our meetings are regularly scheduled. Do we need to take action on the study session for the 21st?
No,
or are we good to go?
Sorry.
That would be in a week? So at the current time, we don't have anything scheduled for a study session, workshop, quote, quote, in a week. It'll be 2 weeks before we meet again.
Yes.
That's the recommendation of administration. Okay? Good, just wanted to check, be sure we had our order correct. Is there anything further needs to come to the board at this time? Yes.
I'm confused. So we don't have anything scheduled,
On the 21st.
and we're not going to schedule anything?
Nothing on the 21st is scheduled. Next meeting is the
2 weeks.
28.
Do you have some topics
Well,
that
I'm
you
just
feel would be
asking,
helpful to
did
address?
we want to discuss these 2 proposals, or no, before the meeting? You want to do it at the meeting again?
Oh, that's an interesting
What
suggestion.
two
So Director Bartolotta is suggesting that we use our opportunity for a study session next week to review proposals for
So if we're able to
organizational
vote on the
development
28th,
consultant.
Or not, I don't care. I mean, I'm just...
No, I mean, you put something out there that might be worth some more discussion. Did anybody resonate, or was that idea resonate with anybody? I guess that's the right way to put it.
I can certainly be available.
I don't know if I will be. I'm having cataract surgery Monday, but who knows? I'm not familiar with it.
You won't be available.
Really?
Okay, no one wants to
I'm
pick
fine.
up on that,
Okay.
make a motion? No?
It's okay. We still have
All
time.
right,
next week.
I'm still looking for anybody nodding their head. Yeah, we could use it, okay. It sounds like we've opted not to
Okay,
then, so
thank you.
there's no
Just
need
wanted to
for a
clarify.
motion. And again, any other business? Otherwise, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.